Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga. Chapter 2139. Silver Ancient Tome. I want this book. The rest of the items are yours, Xueqi told Late Autumn as he picked up the Silver Ancient Tome and stored it in his bag, acting as if he had no interest in the 4 other items in the treasure chest. The 4 other items were indeed valuable at this stage of the game, especially the level 70 Dark Gold helmet for shield warriors. Even superpowers experts would drool over such an item. However, even combined, these 4 items weren't worth nearly as much as the Silver Ancient Tome. God's domain had all kinds of ancient tomes to offer. Some contained clues to items, while others could cause devastating destruction. This Silver Ancient Tome could improve players' natural response time. Normally, a player's neural response time depended on their real-world body. Players typically had to use specialized training methods to improve their natural reaction time, as well as have the innate talent to do so. Otherwise, their success would be limited, regardless of how hard they trained. However, the Silver Ancient Tome broke this rule and could forcibly improve a player's response time in God's domain. Of course, the improvement was minor, and the Silver Ancient Tome's effects varied from person to person, but even a minor improvement could significantly impact a player's performance in the game. This tome was a special item that could make up for a player's congenital deficiencies. Even though the tome's effects weren't as substantial as a boost to physique, each Silver Ancient Tome had sold for tens of thousands of gold during Xueqi's previous life. Some of the superpowers' elderly experts had even traded fragmented legendary items or basic bloodlines to get their hands on one of these tomes, trying to make up for their deteriorating reaction time. Xueqi was actually quite surprised to get his hands on a Silver Ancient Tome so early. If he gave it to one of his guild's refinement realm experts, it wouldn't be long before they broke through to the flowing water realm. After all, improved neural response time would indirectly improve players' combat standards. In fact, when the various large guilds recruited internal members, they typically prioritized players with above-average response time. Currently, Zero Wing had 4 experts stuck between the refinement realm and flowing water realm: Fire Dance, Aqua Rose, Gentle Snow, and Violet Cloud. If they could use the Silver Ancient Tome, they might become flowing water realm experts very quickly. Once they reached the flowing water realm, combined with their abilities in the truth realm, they'd finally blossom into bona fide peak experts. After Xueqi stored the Silver Ancient Tome, Late Autumn gave the Dark Gold treasure chest a hesitant look. Guild Leader Black Flame, this item is a piece of level 70 Dark Gold equipment, Late Autumn said as he examined the helmet for shield warriors. He then turned to Xueqi and said sincerely, "Our Purple Shadow Adventurer team has only avoided annihilation because of you. Accepting such an item is too much." At this stage of the game, even the various superpowers madly contested for level 65 Dark Gold equipment, not to mention level 70 Dark Gold equipment. Moreover, this was a helmet for MTs. It was far more valuable than ordinary equipment of the same level and rank. I've already told you that I only wanted 1 item from the treasure chest. Moreover, it is only level 70 Dark Gold equipment. It is nothing to Zero Wing, Xueqi responded. Seeing the Cursemancer's guilty expression, he chuckled and continued, "If you really can't bring yourself to accept it, why don't you help me out with something else? Then, you can consider the helmet your compensation." He didn't know much about the Purple Shadow Adventurer team, but based on the team's performance and camaraderie, he could see that its members were righteous people. Otherwise, they likely would have split up and fled from Bright Dawn's expert team. That was one of the reasons that Xueqi had chosen to help them. At most, he might have saved any other team from Bright Dawn's bullying. He wouldn't have allowed them to keep the boss and treasure chest. Compensation. Late Autumn was inwardly surprised, looking at Xueqi's calm expression. This swordsman had offered a piece of level 70 Dark Gold equipment as if it meant nothing to him. Moreover, Late Autumn could tell that Xueqi was telling the truth. Immediately he replied, "That won't be a problem. Guild Leader Black Flame, please tell us what you need us to do. Our Purple Shadow Adventurer team will assist you with everything we got. I'm heading to the Bottomless Abyss to take care of something. I'd like your help in clearing out the mobs. The whole affair will take roughly half a day. How about it?" Xueqi asked. The Bottomless Abyss was the lowest-leveled God Mode regional dungeon in God's domain. Not only did an abundance of monsters call the dungeon home, but they were also quite challenging to deal with. Without enough strength, most teams would find themselves on a one-way trip if they tried to enter the dungeon. Initially, Xueqi had planned to clear out the monsters in his path by himself. Mobilizing the guild's main force to help him would only be a waste of time and resources. With Zero Wing's current predicament, the guild couldn't afford such an operation. However, since the Purple Shadow Adventurer team had volunteered its help, he was more than glad to accept. From what he had seen thus far, Purple Shadow was quite strong overall. Although the team couldn't compare to Zero Wing's main force, it was close to rivaling other first-rate guilds' main forces. The only real difference between Purple Shadow and a first-rate guild's main force was their equipment. "You're heading to the Bottomless Abyss?" Colorful Fruit's jaw dropped, and she stared at Xueqi in astonishment. For the players grinding in the ancient undead country, the Bottomless Abyss was a forbidden land. Yet Xueqi had originally planned to head straight into the beast's maw by himself. The various major powers had already attempted to enter the Bottomless Abyss, but every one of them had returned in defeat. Some of those teams had even been comprised of experts, led by peak experts. All right. Although Late Autumn found Xueqi's request surprising, he decided to go through with his promise. "Are we setting off now then?" The sooner we get there the better." Xueqi nodded. "In that case, let's rest and recover. We'll set off in 1 minute," Late Autumn announced, glancing at his teammates' conditions. "Commander, are we really going into the dungeon?" Colorful Fruit whispered, sounding worried. Even the Windwolf adventurer team retreated after less than an hour. Windwolf was the 5th-ranked adventurer team in the Dark Knight Empire and much stronger than Purple Shadow overall, and they hadn't even made it a full hour in the Bottomless Abyss. Moreover, only half of the team had escaped the dungeon alive. Because of this, the Empire's adventurer teams had begun to fear the regional dungeon. Asking them to spend half a day in the Bottomless Abyss was no different than asking them to commit suicide. "Of course, we're going. I've already promised him our help," Late Autumn said. "Besides, we're in just as much danger now as we would be in the Bottomless Abyss. We might as well take out chances." Currently, more than 20 expert teams were targeting them. It was almost guaranteed that they wouldn't all make it out of the psychedelic forest alive. Since that was the case, they might as well try their luck in the Bottomless Abyss. After giving the matter some thought, Colorful Fruit found Late Autumn's reasoning sound. Since both paths led to death, they could at least try to establish a friendship with an expert like Xueqi. Once the Purple Shadow Adventurer team had rested, Xueqi led them toward the God Mode regional dungeon. About 5 minutes after Xueqi and his new companions left the area, a team with an averaged around level 67 found the dark gold treasure chest. These players' weakest piece of equipment was level 65 fine gold rank, and some of its experts even wore multiple pieces of epic equipment. Every member of the team radiated an imposing aura, as well. Overall, this was certainly no ordinary adventurer team. "Boss, those people have already left. By the looks of it, they're heading toward the Bottomless Abyss," a bald, level 68 assassin in blue reported to the stalwart man in a suit of crimson armor. "They should only have departed recently." "They're heading to the Bottomless Abyss?" "A wise decision," the crimson-armored man said, chuckling. "It's a pity that they caught our attention. Notify the other scouts. We'll give chase immediately." Chapter 2140. God Mode Regional Dungeon Ancient Undead Country. Bottomless Abyss. The Bottomless Abyss was a gigantic hole in the center of the psychedelic forest. The radius could rival that of an NPC city's. Pitch-black fog constantly billowed from within, and even from afar, players felt a chill as they watched the fog escape. "So, this is the Bottomless Abyss?" Shock gripped Colorful Fruit as she stared at the massive pit before her. The rest of the Purple Shadow Adventurer team felt the same. Not only was the Bottomless Abyss a spectacular sight, but its aura was also particularly daunting. Despite the distance between them and the regional dungeon, they felt stifled. They couldn't even imagine what it would feel like to stand within the foggy pit. It's no wonder why Windwolf couldn't even last an hour in there. If its aura feels so powerful from out here, I can't imagine how horrific it feels inside. Just moving will likely be taxing. Late Autumn muttered as he watched the fog rise from the Bottomless Abyss. After seeing this pit himself, he, more or less, understood why Windwolf's members had paled whenever they had mentioned the Bottomless Abyss, claiming that the regional dungeon was no place for current players. "The fog is still quite thin. Let's hurry inside," Xueqi commented, as he too watched the fog. He was incredibly familiar with the bottomless abyss, so he was used to the sight. He immediately approached the staircase leading into the pit. Many ancient gods had participated in the Great Ancient War, and the bottomless abyss was a byproduct of one of those battles. According to legend, the destruction the gods had wrought here had been so massive that it had broken through the world barrier that separated the gods' domain continent from the Dark Abyss. As a result, the Dark Abyss's dark energy had flowed into God's domain through the breach, creating this bottomless abyss. Fortunately, the ancient gods had set up a magic barrier here to prevent the dark energy from escaping the regional dungeon, protecting the nearby kingdoms and empires from ruin. Without that foresight, the Dark Abyss's power might have devoured the entire continent. Now, the dark energy within the bottomless abyss sometimes spiked due to the weakening barrier. By this point, the barrier had been in place for tens of thousands of years, and even if the materials used to create it had been godly relic rank, they couldn't withstand the corrosion of time. When the bottomless abyss's dark energy was at its strongest, Tier 1 players could only remain within the regional dungeon for 3 or 4 hours. Tier 2 players could, at most, withstand the energy for 10 hours before they'd have to flee. If they exceeded this time limit, the dark energy would corrode their flesh, and their stamina and concentration consumption would increase exponentially. It wouldn't be long before they died from exhaustion. To make matters worse, players that died from exhaustion within the bottomless abyss would suffer double the normal death penalty, and their souls would enter a weakened state due to the corrosion. The corrosion would give them a debuff that significantly reduced EXP gain for the next 3 to 48 hours. This was why teams without sufficient strength suffered such miserable fates within the God Mode regional dungeon. Not even ordinary Tier 2 players had dared to set foot in the bottomless abyss during Xueqi's previous life. However, as a God Mode regional dungeon, the bottomless abyss had many benefits to offer. Its bountiful resources were only secondary. More importantly, the dungeon's mana density was exceedingly high. Even though the mana within was chaotic and impure, players could rapidly grow stronger by fighting within the dungeon. Furthermore, the bottomless abyss had no lack of powerful monsters with high combat standards, which players could use as training partners. To put it simply, the bottomless abyss was heaven for the strong and hell for the weak. Hence, God's domain's various superpowers had developed a love-hate relationship with the dungeon in the past. As Late Autumn watched Xueqi walk into the bottomless abyss without any hesitation, he gritted his teeth and led his team to follow the swordsman. The moment Purple Shadow's members entered the bottomless abyss, their bodies began indescribably heavy. Their reaction speeds also slowed slightly. However, the dense mana allowed their minds to remain at their peaks. These players felt like they were having an out-of-body experience as the opposing sensations assaulted them. It was like trying to operate high-performance software on an ancient computer. Moreover, they realized they couldn't see as far within the bottomless abyss. Normally, they could see up to 100 yards away, despite the ancient undead country's poor visibility, but now they couldn't see past 50 yards. At this distance, monsters could see them before they noticed, and they'd frequently come under attack. After descending the staircase for about 3 minutes, the Purple Shadow members realized that level 60+ monsters hung from the walls and dominated the staircase. The weakest among them was a lord, and they all radiated intense auras that felt particularly deadly to Purple Shadow's members. Before Purple Shadow's members could react, a group of level 60 and 61 demonic stone apes charged at the team. Demonic stone ape, elemental creature, lord, level 60. HP 19, 000, 000/19, 000, 000. Prepare for battle. MTs. Prioritize the stone apes on the staircase. Melee players. Contain the monsters on the wall. Healers. Focus on everyone's HP. Late Autumn's response was quick, and he cautiously issued commands. Although these demonic stone apes were much lower leveled than they were in the bottomless abyss. Late Autumn couldn't afford to be reckless, employing the most conservative strategy he could think. The demonic stone apes slammed into Purple Shadow's level 66 and 67 MTs. Like seasoned warriors, these monsters used tactics against their player enemies. One stone ape would attack head-on, while 2 or 3 of its companions attacked from the sides. Their coordination was seamless. Purple Shadow's expert MTs couldn't cope with the coordinated assault, and each took 2 or 3 hits during the initial charge. Every MT instantly lost over 50,000 HP, losing more than half of their totals. The healers in the rear began to panic, swiftly casting healing spells. Why are these monsters so powerful? Colorful Fruit was stunned as she watched the 4 demonic stone apps suppress her teammates. Purple Shadow's lead MT was a half-step refinement realm expert, and the weakest piece of equipment on him was level 65 fine gold rank. He even wore a piece of epic equipment. Yet, it took everything he had to hold off 4 Lord-ranked monsters, and he wasn't faring well. Earlier, their lead MT had tanked the level 69 Grand Lord by himself. The 20-plus demonic stone apes on the staircase quickly broke past the MT's defensive line, and 6 of the monsters charged toward the team's healers. The remaining dozen or so stone apes preoccupied the team's melee players. Before Purple Shadow's members could recover from their shock of seeing how powerful these demonic stone apes were, a 5-meter-tall stone ape, much larger than its companions, dropped down from the wall above, landing with a thud behind the team. Great Stone Ape, Elemental Creature, Great Lord, Level 62. HP 42, 000, 000/42, 000, 000. Before the level 66 Berserker, who guarded the healers, could react, the Great Stone Ape slammed its massive fists into him. The Berserker slammed into the wall, his HP falling to a critical level. The Great Stone Ape's frightening strength and speed stunned every member of the team. Although Colorful Fruit reacted immediately and attacked the Great Stone Ape with her vines, the monster easily tore the 2 vines to shreds. A dull, black glow then enveloped the monster's fist, and it threw a punch at Purple Shadow's healers. The Great Lord moved from defense to offense so smoothly that it didn't move like any monster they had seen. Rather, the Great Stone Ape fought like an expert player with a plethora of combat experience. It's over. Colorful Fruit's heart sank. A Great Lord's skill could instantly kill a plate-wearing player, let alone a cloth armor class player. Once the team's healers fell, they'd lose any chance of winning this battle. However, before the Great Stone Ape's fist could connect with the healers, Xueqi appeared before the Great Lord. He unsheathed Killing Ray and responded to the monster with a light slash. An arc of blue lightning blinded the players for a split second before the Great Stone Ape joined the level 66 Berserker in decorating the wall. Its chest bore a deep, oozing cut. Chapter 2141. Flying Improvements. Purple Shadow's members were stunned to see the Great Stone Ape embedded in the hard stone wall. How high is his strength? Colorful Fruit could not help but stare at the Great Stone Ape in disbelief. She had felt the Great Stone Ape's strength when it had torn apart her vines so effortlessly, high enough to rival a Grand Lord's of the same level. However, not only had Xueqi repelled the monster's skill with a single swing of his blade, but he had also thrown the Great Lord with that strike. His strength was simply absurd. Meanwhile, Purple Shadow's healers breathed a sigh of relief at receiving Xueqi's help. They immediately put more distance between them and the Great Lord. Lead MT, aggro the boss. Guardian Knights, activate Protection Blessing, and hold down the demonic stone apes. Late Autumn shouted commands to Team's lead MT the moment the Great Stone Apes' offensive had halted. From this initial clash with the Stone Apes, he realized that these monsters possessed extremely high combat standards, especially the Great Stone Ape. Only their team's lead MT could likely hold down that boss. If he sent any of his other MTs to tank it, he'd just be sending them to their deaths. Roar! However, as soon as Late Autumn finished his command, the Great Stone Ape pulled itself away from the wall with a furious roar. Its eyes became bloodshot, its muscles bulged. Clearly, this Great Lord had just entered some kind of berserk state, charging straight for Xueqi. Crap! Solitary, activate your berserk skill, and stop that thing. Late Autumn hurriedly ordered the level 67, Tier 2 Berserker that stood closest to the monster. Leave it to me. Solitary Dragon nodded in reply. Before the Berserker could activate his berserk skill and face the Great Stone Ape, however, Xueqi stopped him and said, "No need. It's still too soon to use berserk skills here. Leave this to me." After saying so, Xueqi took a step forward and appeared before the enraged Great Stone Ape in an instant. The swordsman looked like a child compared to the 5-meter-tall monster. Seeing its hated enemy standing up to it, the Great Stone Ape swung its fists at Xueqi. The sharp sound of the movements cutting through the wind was audible from 30 yards away. In the blink of an eye, the Great Stone Ape fired 6 strikes at Xueqi, the massive size of its fists making the punches impossible to dodge. The other players' expressions darkened as they watched from the corner of their eyes. This move was enough to tell that the Great Stone Ape's combat standards were on par with a player who reached the middle stage of the Trial Tower's 5th floor. Combined with attributes that rivaled a Grand Lord of the same level, how were they supposed to fight this monster? Contrary to expectations, however, the attack hadn't sent Xueqi flying. Instead, all 6 punches harmlessly passed through Xueqi before the swordsman began to fade out of existence, revealing that the Great Stone Ape had only struck an afterimage. Without anyone realizing it, Xueqi had moved behind the Great Stone Ape and had already swung his sacred sword. Xiao! Another blue flash sliced through the Great Stone Ape, eliciting a scream and plundering over 70,000 HP from the Great Lord. Another visible cut now graced the monster's sturdy form. The Great Stone Ape's fury reached new heights as it took another hit. In response, it spun around and launched another barrage of punches at Xueqi. As if Xueqi existed in another space entirely, the Great Lord couldn't hit him no matter how hard it tried. Instead, one cut after another joined the first 2. Not only did Xueqi continue to reduce the boss's HP, but he repeatedly inflicted injuries, as well, reducing the Great Stone Ape's reaction speed. Is this real? Colorful Fruit watched Xueqi give the monster a one-sided beating, utterly awestruck. For a moment, she even forgot to support her teammates. Purple Shadow's lead MT, who had been in the midst of trying to assist, was just as stupefied. A Tier 2 swordsman was perfectly suppressing a level 62 Great Lord with the combat standards of the Trial Tower's 5th floor. Moreover, he accomplished this feat within the bottomless abyss, where players' physical bodies were severely suppressed. This was unbelievable. Most importantly, Xueqi's calm composure made it seem as if he were confident of slaying this Great Stone Ape by himself. It's no wonder why Bright Dawn was so afraid of him. He is truly a monster. Late Autumn inwardly exclaimed as he watched the Great Stone Ape's HP plummet. Finish the fight quickly. We'll only attract more monsters if we linger, Xueqi shouted, noticing the dazed expressions Purple Shadow's members wore. Although he could solo the Great Stone Ape, doing so would require a lot of time and energy, and a God Mode regional dungeon wasn't a place where players could afford prolonged battles. If this fight took too long, they'd attract another wave of monsters. Xueqi's warning snapped Purple Shadow's members out of their daze, and they immediately resumed their attacks against the demonic stone apes. Immediately, they resumed their attack on the demonic stone apes. With Xueqi keeping the Great Stone Ape in check, Purple Shadow's members had an easier time dealing with the demonic stone apes. Moreover, they began to adapt to the bottomless abyss's environment as they fought. As a result, their attacks became more efficient. Under Late Autumn's command, the team gradually descended the staircase, never fighting in one place for too long. Although they occasionally encountered other stone ape groups, the number of enemies they fought at any one time was tolerable. Finally, after more than 5 hours of combat, the team had cleared out the demonic stone apes and great stone apes in their path. The loot the monsters had dropped had surprised Purple Shadow's members. Not only did these monsters drop plenty of magic crystals, but they had also granted the team a few pieces of level 60 equipment and materials. These monsters' loot was far more abundant than outside the regional dungeon. Moreover, the weakest piece of equipment the stone apes had dropped was level 60 mysterious iron rank, and some had even granted secret silver ranked items. Such high-quality equipment could fetch a lot of money on the market. It was no exaggeration to claim that the last 5 hours' harvest could rival a full day of grinding elsewhere. However, the loot wasn't the most valuable acquisition. Due to their battles against the stone apes, Purple Shadow's members had been inspired, improving their combat standards. That was a benefit they definitely wouldn't find outside of the bottomless abyss. Commander, this place is heavenly. If we could spend a month down here, the Purple Shadow Adventurer team could become one of the top 5 adventurer teams in the Dark Knight Empire. Half Feather exclaimed. As a refinement realm expert, he could sense himself improving throughout the 5 hours of constant battle. Needless to say, his teammates must have improved even more than he had. Furthermore, these monsters' loot was several times better than monsters elsewhere. That's right. I hadn't imagined that this place would be so helpful. It's no wonder why the various large guilds are so desperate to explore the bottomless abyss, Late Autumn said. He had a far better understanding of the regional dungeon's value than his subordinates. While resources and funds were important to a guild, those factors weren't nearly as valuable as its members' strength. This God Mode regional dungeon had proven to be a natural training ground, and players' leveling speed wouldn't slow while they trained here. On the contrary, they would enjoy a much higher leveling speed than outside of the dungeon's borders. If a guild took control of the Bottomless Abyss, its development would skyrocket. As he considered this, Late Autumn's gaze drifted back to Xueqi, who stood some distance away. A large part of the reason why they were able to survive for more than 5 hours in the Bottomless Abyss was because of Xueqi. Xueqi had defeated one great lord after another for them. There were also times where 2 great lords had appeared simultaneously. If not for Xueqi suppressing every great lord that appeared, they would have long since been annihilated. After all, the only person in the Purple Shadow Adventurer team capable of holding their ground against the Great Lord-ranked Great Stone Apes was their lead MT. Even then, the lead MT could only hold his ground against one Great Stone Ape at a time. Meanwhile, after moving for more than 5 hours, everyone also arrived inside a cave. The cave wasn't formed naturally, but man-made instead. There were also multiple paths leading out of the cavern, the paths forming a labyrinth. "You guys rest here for now. This place is very safe," Xueqi said as he looked at the exhausted Purple Shadow members. After saying so, he made his way into the labyrinth. The labyrinth-like cave was the Bottomless Abyss's first floor. At the same time, it was the only place in the entire regional dungeon that allowed for a guild town or city to be transferred over. Chapter 2142. Abyss Residence. After hearing Xueqi's instructions, Late Autumn and the others sighed in relief as they sat down to rest. As for what Xueqi planned to do inside the labyrinth, they had no intention of asking about it. After all, Xueqi was the leader of a guild. He naturally had his reasons for coming to this dangerous place. If they pried too deeply, they might end up annoying or angering him. Moreover, even if they wanted to enter the labyrinth with Xueqi, they most likely didn't have the ability to survive for very long in there. The labyrinth was rife with level 65 plus undead, many of which were great lords. With just their adventurer team's strength, they wouldn't be able to progress very far into the labyrinth. Not to mention, if they came across a Grand Lord, their fates would be sealed. In the next moment, Purple Shadow's members saw Xueqi easily weaving through the Undead's attacks. Moreover, the Undead here actually couldn't keep up with his speed at all, the distance between the two sides steadily widening. After a few seconds, only the Undead remained in sight. "The difference between us is really huge," Colorful Fruit said, a bitter smile forming on her face after Xueqi disappeared. "It is indeed massive, but it's not like we can't catch up," Late Autumn said, nodding. "An organization called the Adventurer Alliance has appeared in the Fire Dragon Empire and is currently recruiting powerful adventurer teams. I heard that even super guilds have to treat this Adventurer Alliance with respect. Moreover, the Alliance is even nurturing experts. I received an invitation, but I didn't put too much stock in the matter. On further thought, I feel that we should join the Alliance." In the past, he had been very confident in Purple Shadow's strength, believing that even if Purple Shadow was no match for superpowers wouldn't have an easy time dealing with Purple Shadow either. After today's fight with Bright Dawn's team, however, he realized that he was sorely mistaken. Before a superpower, Purple Shadow didn't even have the strength to protect itself. Unless they became monsters like Xueqi, daunting even an expert like Bright Dawn at the thought of attacking them, they would never secure a foothold in the Dark Knight Empire. Meanwhile, the Fire Dragon Empire's Adventurer Alliance was an existence that could intimidate even super guilds. Needless to say, its existence was extraordinary. After all, the Fire Dragon Empire was one of God's domain's 4 great empires, and far superior to the Dark Knight Empire. Many superpowers and even quite a few super guilds had established footholds there. The fact that the Adventurer Alliance was able to establish a foothold in the Fire Dragon Empire, despite competition from so many superpowers, proved just how powerful it was. As for joining a guild, that was something Late Autumn was not willing to do, no matter what. Otherwise, he would have long since joined Starlink together with his comrades. After all, Starlink had extended an invitation to many of the powerful adventurer teams in the Dark Knight Empire. "Commander, can we really catch up to him?" Colorful Fruit turned to look at Late Autumn reflexively, a hint of anticipation gleaming in her eyes. Xueqi's strength was already deeply ingrained in her heart. At this point, what she wanted to do most was to share the same stage with Xuefeng one day, instead of staying in the Dark Knight Empire and remaining a frog in a well. It shouldn't be a problem. The Alliance promised that as long as we pass its test and qualify for its training, we will be able to reach the apex of God's domain, Late Autumn said. Previously, Late Autumn had sneered at this promise, as he thought that the Purple Shadow Adventurer team already stood at the Dark Knight Empire's peak. There was no need for Purple Shadow to undergo the Adventurer Alliance's training. However, in hindsight, the gap between Purple Shadow and the Adventurer Alliance was massive. Moreover, a power that could stand shoulder to shoulder with superpowers should understand the strength of the various superpowers. Since the Adventurer Alliance had declared that it could help qualified players become apex experts, the Alliance was most likely telling the truth. This is great. The next time we meet, I must stand on the same stage as him. Colorful Fruit thought to herself, her fighting spirit soaring. At this moment, aside from Colorful Fruit, Half Feather and the other top experts of Purple Shadow also had similar thoughts. Meanwhile, as Purple Shadow's members were resting, Xuefeng had activated Gale Domain to shake off the undead chasing him. The undead here were living beings that died during the Great Ancient War. Not only were their combat standards extremely high, but they were also organized when fighting. He would require a lot of time to defeat them. Fortunately, the undead here were not monsters that persistently chased players. They would give up pursuit once the distance between their target and themselves exceeded 300 yards. Xuefeng was a level 76 player, and with his basic attributes, his movement speed was already faster than that of great lords of the same level. After activating Gale Domain, he shook off the level 65 plus undead here right away and effortlessly passed through one area after another. Meanwhile, the deeper he ventured into the labyrinth, the higher the levels of the undead he came across, the monster's levels gradually increasing from 65 to 70. Finally, after traveling through the labyrinthine pathways for more than an hour, Xuefeng arrived before a dilapidated palace in a cavern that was enveloped by a magic barrier. None of the wandering undead dared come within 100 yards of the magic barrier. Xuefeng, however, walked toward the barrier without hesitation. The magic barrier specifically targeted undead and was totally ineffective against the living. There was no creature inside the palace besides the phantom of a gray-robed old man. If players used an advanced identification skill on this old man, they would discover that he was actually a level 180, Tier 4 hero. The title of hero was not easily obtained in God's domain. The existences granted the title of hero were invincible in their tier. Meanwhile, not only was this old man a hero, but his title had even been bestowed by an ancient god. In other words, he was blessed with a portion of an ancient god's power, making him the strongest NPC in the entire Bottomless Abyss. Young adventurer, this is not a place for the living, the hero Saibu said as he opened his eyes to look at Xuefeng. Immediately, a horrific aura filled the palace. If an ordinary Tier 2 player were standing here right now, this horrific pressure would most likely scare them stiff. However, Xuefeng had the support of multiple fragmented legendary items and a bloodline, so he managed to withstand the pressure brought on by this aura. Esteemed hero Saibu, I am here by the will of the gods to expel the darkness, Xuefeng said respectfully as he stood 30 yards away from Saibu. Players wanting to transfer a guild town to the Bottomless Abyss needed to fulfill 3 conditions, 2 of which were the standard conditions for transferring a guild town. The third condition was a hidden condition: passing Saibu's test. The first part of the test was enduring Saibu's aura. In the past, 90% of the powers that attempted this test had failed at the very start because ordinary experts couldn't endure Saibu's aura at all. One needed the basic attributes of a Tier 3 player of the same level to do so. Otherwise, they would be forced to kneel, then get teleported out of the palace. Not bad. Being able to move so close to me proves that you have the strength to deal with the darkness, Saibu said, smiling and nodding in approval when he saw that Xuefeng was barely affected by his aura. However, you cannot expel the darkness here with just this. Since you are a bronze legatee, I can set up a stable area for your residence, which will allow you to combat the darkness here long-term. However, you will have to contribute 6,000 mana stones. Lord Saibu, here are the 6,000 mana stones you require, Xuefeng said as he took out the mana stones he had prepared beforehand. He had basically emptied out the guild's reserve of magic crystals to make these 6,000 mana stones. However, this price was well worth it if he could move Stone Forest Town here. Excellent. So many mana stones should just barely be enough to resist the corrosion of darkness here, Saibu said. As he received the 6,000 mana stones from Xueqi, he couldn't help taking a few extra glances at the youth before him. Following which, he started incanting. As Saibu chanted, the 6,000 mana stones merged and transformed into a resplendent gemstone. With this item, you can set up a magic barrier on the first floor, which we are on. The residents you set up inside this barrier will be able to avoid the corrosion of darkness. Keep in mind that this item can be used only on the first floor, Saibu said gravely as he handed the gemstone to Xueqi. When Xueqi accepted the gemstone, he sighed ruefully. In the past, he could only watch from the sidelines as the various superpowers established one town after another inside the bottomless abyss. In this life, however, he too could set up his own town here. Chapter 2143. Transferring Stone Forest Town. Xueqi didn't linger after obtaining the barrier gemstone, making his way toward the Undead Forest. The Undead Forest was located in the center of the Bottomless Abyss's first floor. Not only did a large number of level 70+ undead wander the area, but it was also where the first floor's dark energy was densest. Without high darkness resistance, not even Tier 2 players could spend more than 6 hours in the area. However, despite the Undead Forest's dangers, it was one of the few places on the first floor that could support a guild city. The Bottomless Abyss's first floor was comprised of a series of connected tunnels and caverns, which was why there weren't many places that could house a guild city. As far as Xueqi could remember, fewer than 10 caverns could support such a massive player base. Most of them could only support an advanced town. As a result, players needed to select the location for their guild town carefully in the Bottomless Abyss. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to promote the town due to insufficient space. Of course, Xueqi had another reason for choosing the Undead Forest. It was the closest location to the Bottomless Abyss's second floor. The Bottomless Abyss was a level 60 to 100 super large-scale regional dungeon, and it was considerably larger than many neutral maps elsewhere, separated into a total of 3 floors. Each floor was more difficult than the last, and the second floor was considered a turning point. To current players, the Bottomless Abyss's first floor was already horrific, but they didn't realize that the first floor was only a training ground to help players adapt to the regional dungeon's environment. These monsters were only between level 60 and 75. However, the dungeon wouldn't be so kind once they reached the second floor, its difficulty rising to a whole new level. The second floor's monster ranged from level 70 to 90. But as the God Mode regional dungeon became more challenging, it would reveal its true benefits. From the second floor onward, not only would monsters drop 7 Luminaries crystals, but their drop rates for fine gold and dark gold equipment would be roughly 3 times higher than elsewhere. Players would also find plenty of combat techniques and skill books. They'd even have a chance of finding a legacy if they were particularly lucky. Unlike most legacies found outside of the dungeon, those in the Bottomless Abyss had survived since ancient times. The weakest legacy players could find in this regional dungeon was advanced rank. As for the Bottomless Abyss's third floor, it was where players would discover the true essence of the God Mode regional dungeon. Not only would players have a chance of obtaining peak legacies when they killed the bosses on that floor, but they'd also have an extremely small chance of obtaining fragmented legendary items. Typically, fragmented legendary items didn't even drop from ordinary mythic bosses. Only special mythic bosses had a chance of dropping such precious treasure. However, the Bottomless Abyss's third floor was the typical map. Every mythic boss on that floor had a chance of dropping fragmented legendary items, and the dungeon's final boss was guaranteed to drop one. One could say the Bottomless Abyss was responsible for introducing fragmented legendary items to God's Domain's players. In the past, the various superpowers had only begun to acquire fragmented legendary items once they had discovered the Bottomless Abyss. After that moment, everyone had come to understand that epic items weren't truly the best weapons or equipment in the game, and that something even stronger existed. Since Xueqi was the first person to acquire a barrier gemstone in the Bottomless Abyss, he had to take advantage of as many opportunities in preparation for conquering the regional dungeon's third floor. After an hour or so of travel, Xueqi found himself in a massive, spacious cavern. At first glance, the cavern looked like any other forest, filled with verdant trees and bright light. It looked nothing like the cavern it truly was. This was the Undead Forest. The dark energy here was so dense it was stifling, and level 70+ Great Lord ranked undead roamed through the woods. There were even quite a few Grand Lords. Dark energy affected these monsters in the same way mana affected players. The denser the dark energy was, the higher the monster's combat standards would be. Even the weakest Great Lord in the Undead Forest had combat standards on par with the late stage of the Trial Tower's 5th floor. Such combat standards would be impressive enough to earn a player a party leader position among a first-rate guild's core members. Including the monster's high basic attributes, even a first-rate guild's chief MT would have a tough time against these Great Lords. The Grand Lords, on the other hand, could reach the 6th floor's early stage. They were nightmarish opponents, even for a first-rate guild's main force. Only the various superpowers' top combatants had a chance against these monsters. Thank goodness I have the Bible of Darkness. I don't know how I'd make it through this forest without it. Xueqi was relieved as he used omniscient eyes to watch the level 74 Grand Lord ranked Great Necromancers that wandered in the distance. These level 74 Great Necromancers were extremely powerful. Not even Xueqi would dare provoke them in his current state. If he accidentally aggroed one, he'd have no choice but to flee. Fortunately, the Bible of Darkness granted him control over the power of darkness. This, in turn, allowed him to resist dark energy and significantly lowered the chances of dark creatures noticing him. He'd be able to avoid the Undead Forest's residents with relative ease. After about 10 minutes or so, Xueqi had circled around more than 30 Great Lords. He had also encountered more than 3 Grand Lords. If a superpower's main force visited this forest at this stage of the game, their deaths would be a guarantee. It should be here, Xueqi thought as he observed his location. He then took the barrier gemstone from his bag and began to chant an incantation. After 10 verses and more than 30 seconds, the barrier gemstone disappeared. Then, 2 gigantic silver magic arrays formed above and beneath Xueqi, and every monster within the array's range released pained cries before fleeing the area. The 2 magic arrays continued to grow larger, from their initial 500-yard radius to 1,000 yards, then 3,000 yards. The arrays only stopped expanding after another 30 seconds. Suddenly, a colossal magic barrier blossomed in the middle of the Undead Forest, occupying 1/10 of the entire area. Not a single monster stood within the barrier. Next, I need to guide Stone Forest Town's transfer. Xueqi was quite satisfied with the forest's lush greenery within the magic barrier. He then took out the town transfer token he had obtained from the Eclipse Throne and chose to transfer Stone Forest Town. Originally, he had planned to use this token to move Stone Forest Town to a neutral map neighboring Starmoon Kingdom. But with Silverwing Town in the Ore Empire, he had set the token aside. Now, the token would finally display its potential. System: do you wish to transfer Stone Forest Town to the specified area? Xueqi clicked yes without hesitation. Chapter 2144. Abyss Town. Once Xueqi made his selection, another system notification rang in his ears. System: you have selected to transfer Stone Forest Town to the specified location. Transfer conditions met. System: Stone Forest Town will be closed off in 1 minute. Estimated transfer time is 30 minutes. Players will not be able to enter the specified transfer area during this time. You will automatically be teleported out of the transfer area in 10 seconds. Half an hour, huh? When Xueqi heard the system notification, he could not help his growing excitement. Nothing was more important to the various large guilds than resources and experts. As long as Stone Forest Town's transfer completed smoothly, it would become even more important than Zero Wing City. The guild town would even generate more profit than the city. While Xueqi considered his next step, he was transported out of the magic barrier. Meanwhile, back in Starmoon Kingdom Stone Forest Town, the players in the town were in an uproar. What's going on? Stone Forest Town is moving to another location? Crap! I just got here to level up. What is Zero Wing trying to do? Stone Forest Town has just begun to recover, yet Zero Wing is moving it elsewhere? Does Zero Wing think the town will attract more players if it's in another location? This is a scam. We need to boycott Zero Wing. The guild's abandoning new players just to become more popular. I won't ever set foot in a Zero Wing town again. We'll see how long Zero Wing lasts if no one visits its towns. The players in Stone Forest Town fell into heated discussions when they received the system notification about the town's relocation. The players new to God's domain were particularly boisterous. Stone Forest Town was still a holy ground for players between level 30 and 50. Not only was the town next to a low-level Azura mode regional dungeon, but it also had everything low-level players could need or want. Not even NPC cities could rival Stone Forest Town's benefits for low-level players. However, before they had the chance to enjoy these benefits, the system had announced Stone Forest Town's transfer to another location. This meant the time they had spent trying to reach the town had been for nothing. Meanwhile, news of Stone Forest Town's relocation quickly reached Star Moon Kingdom's various major powers. What? Zero Wing is moving Stone Forest Town to another location? Stone Forest Town's popularity has only begun to recover. It's still earning a significant magic crystal profit each day. Yet Zero Wing wants to relocate the town? Has the guild found a better location? I want this investigated immediately. Tell our spies in Zero Wing to find out where the guild plans to relocate the town. For independent players, Stone Forest Town's relocation only meant that they'd lose a leveling spot, and that only impacted the independent players that had recently joined God's Domain. Naturally, there were other maps where they could grind. However, Stone Forest Town's transfer held a completely different meaning for Star Moon Kingdom's various powers. Transferring a town meant transferring an area of influence. Since no one could oppose Zero Wing in Star Moon Kingdom, they'd be doomed if the guild relocated Stone Forest Town to their territories. Hence, the kingdom's powers anxiously searched for the town's new location. While Star Moon Kingdom's various powers panicked, Yuan Tiexin, who resided in one of White River City's advanced restaurants, stared intently at the report he had just received from a subordinate. Uncle Yuan, have our spies learned anything? Purple Jade asked curiously. Is Black Flame's claim really true? Has he actually relocated Stone Forest Town into the Bottomless Abyss? The various superpowers were paying particularly close attention to the God Mode regional dungeon. If not for the Bottomless Abyss's monsters and environment, the secret pavilion would have already dispatched a large team to explore the dungeon. Meanwhile, according to the most recent report, quite a few super guilds had sent their own teams into the Bottomless Abyss. Unfortunately, they had suffered grievous losses for doing so. According to their investigation, current players simply weren't strong enough to grind in the regional dungeon. They'd have to reach level 70 before they'd have any chance of survival. Hence, she found it truly hard to believe that Zero Wing had successfully transferred Stone Forest Town to the dungeon, but when she recalled Shifeng's confident expression on the day they had made their deal, she knew he hadn't been joking about his plans. Furthermore, if Shifeng failed to complete the transfer, the secret pavilion would secure the Guardian puppet design. They haven't been able to verify anything yet, Yuan Tiexin said, shaking his head. But based on our information, Black Flame has made an appearance in the ancient Undead country. He even humiliated Bright Dawn, one of Starlink's vice guild leaders. I believe that your guess is likely correct. A town's transfer, after all, requires its owner's permission. Yuan Tiexin couldn't help the sting of regret he felt. If the secret pavilion had been as confident in Zero Wing's abilities as Shifeng, it would have likely invested more in the guild, rather than treat Zero Wing with half-hearted sincerity. If Zero Wing has actually accomplished its goal, its future will be set. With Stone Forest Town alone, Zero Wing will qualify to contend with superpowers. If it can solidify its legacy foundation as well, then we can reasonably expect that it will become a super first-rate guild any day now. Purple Jade said. She had a thorough understanding of how valuable the Bottomless Abyss's resources were. If a guild monopolized those resources, its development speed would be astonishing. Moreover, the various superpowers would have a very difficult time dealing with Zero Wing before players reached level 100. Even Starlink would find it challenging to shake Zero Wing's foundations. Meanwhile, within Zero Wing, guild members excitedly discussed the latest news regarding Stone Forest Town. I wonder where the guild is moving Stone Forest Town to. I'm guessing that it's moving the town to a neutral map. All of the large guilds are trying to claim them, and our guild is no exception. I can't wait to find out which neutral map the town will occupy. I agree. Since Starlink is so dead set on suppressing our guild in the Or Empire, we can't really do anything in the Empire's core area. We're stuck around Silverwing Town. It'd be wonderful if the guild transferred Stone Forest Town to that area. Honestly, it's not a big deal if the guild doesn't transfer Stone Forest Town to the Or Empire. Starlink already has a fortress there, but it doesn't have any bases in other neutral maps. We could secure a massive advantage if the guild transfers Stone Forest Town to a different neutral map. Moreover, the Zero Wing auction house now has access to a wider variety of items. Even if the guild transfers the town to a smaller neutral map, our leveling speed won't be any slower than it is in the Ore Empire. Many of Zero Wing's members expressed their guesses and hopes for Stone Forest Town's new location, every one of them filled with anticipation. Although Fire Dance had repelled the Starlink forces camped outside of Silverwing Town and restored some of the guild's morale, that didn't change the fact that Starlink still harassed the guild's members in the rest of the Ore Empire and the other neutral maps around Starmoon Kingdom. To make matters worse, other guilds' members were rapidly growing stronger and exploring neutral maps. To say that Zero Wing's members didn't have any opinions on the matter would be a lie. As every player throughout Starmoon Kingdom discussed this abrupt change, half an hour passed quickly. Many of the players keeping an eye on the guild teleportation function soon noticed that Stone Forest Town's name had reappeared among the list of available destinations. However, they were dumbfounded when they saw the level 60 limit. What's going on? Why is there a level limit? As players wondered about this oddity, some guild members, those above level 60, couldn't help themselves and purchased a guild transfer scroll to visit Stone Forest Town. When these Zero Wing members arrived, the sound of a system notification reached their ears. System. You have discovered the Bottomless Abyss. Chapter 2145. Attention, the Bottomless Abyss. Most of the Zero Wing members that had teleported to Stone Forest Town had failed to react to the system notification, but some of those players, who had a certain understanding of the ancient undead country, were excited to see it. Is this real? We're actually inside a God Mode regional dungeon. All hail the guild leader. Our guild is set for life now. Although none of the various powers had made any progress in exploring the Bottomless Abyss, what they had learned of the regional dungeon gave them high hopes. Moreover, the Bottomless Abyss was the reason that Starlink had been able to suppress both Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor when it had laid claim to a single fortress. Stone Forest Town's new environment also surprised Zero Wing's members. In the Bottomless Abyss, the town's mana density was likely even higher than in Zero Wing City. Players would be able to achieve the same results when training their combat standards with half the effort here. Stone Forest Town had become a sacred ground, ideal for players. Not only could players level up and upgrade equipment around the town, but they could also train their combat standards and techniques in the town. Shortly after Zero Wing's members discovered Stone Forest Town's new location, news spread quickly to Starmoon Kingdom's various major powers. How is that possible? Someone must have made a mistake with this report. That's a God Mode regional dungeon we're talking about. How could Zero Wing just transfer Stone Forest Town there? All of the various powers instinctively denied the validity of the news. Everyone knew that even the various superpowers were powerless in the Bottomless Abyss. Surviving in the dungeon was nearly impossible, much less raiding it. It simply shouldn't be possible to move a guild town to such a lethal location. However, when these powers began to receive similar reports from other spies within Zero Wing, they couldn't deny the truth. There was no doubt that after today, Zero Wing would become an overlord in God's domain. Even if it wasn't yet a superpower, it now qualified to contend with the various superpowers in the game. Meanwhile, in one of White River City's advanced restaurants, Yuan Tiexin and Purple Jade received confirmation of their suspicions, and they fell silent for some time. Zero Wing did it, Uncle Yuan. Are we going to begin the next part of our plan now? Purple Jade asked excitedly after recovering from her surprise. Although she had known that Feng hadn't lied to them, she couldn't help the surprise and admiration she felt once he had actually made good on his promise. MHM. Notify our subordinates and tell them to organize the necessary manpower to visit Stone Forest Town. We need to secure the Bottomless Abyss before the other superpowers have time to prepare. Yuan Tiexin nodded. Smiling, he continued, this time, we'll show the Chamber's advanced members how foolish the Secret Pavilion's decision was. The Secret Chamber of Commerce's advanced members had criticized the Pavilion for demoting Starlink to basic membership rank, and the Pavilion had been forced to offer a variety of benefits to quell their anger. To make matters worse, many superpowers that had heard of the matter had ridiculed the Secret Pavilion for being foolish enough to abandon a fortress in the ancient undead country for Zero Wing. However, none of that mattered now. The Secret Pavilion owned a portion of Stone Forest Town's shares. Not only would it earn a large number of coins from the town, but it could also establish a guild transfer point within its walls. The pavilion's members would not have to run all the way to the ancient undead country to reach the bottomless abyss. In fact, the pavilion's members could now grind in the regional dungeon without having to leave it. Once they ran out of stamina, they could simply return to Stone Forest Town and rest. The pavilion now had more advantages than the other superpowers. With this relocation, Zero Wing could nullify any progress Starlink had made in the bottomless abyss on a whim. Moreover, Zero Wing wouldn't have to resort to drastic measures to do so. As long as the guild barred Starlink's members from Stone Forest Town, allowing others in, Starlink would fall behind. If the situation persisted, it would even affect Starlink's position in the Dark Knight Empire. This was exactly what the superpower had attempted to accomplish by hindering Zero Wing's progress in the neutral maps around Star Moon Kingdom. Moreover, Starlink would likely find Zero Wing a difficult pest to crush now. Once the various superpowers discovered Stone Forest Town's relocation, they'd reach out to the smaller guild in an attempt to secure a partnership. Once that happened, Zero Wing wouldn't be so easy to shake. However, if Starlink allowed Zero Wing to develop in the bottomless abyss freely, the superpower would only lose its advantages in its own empire. I doubt anyone had imagined that a small guild like Zero Wing would put the Dark Knight Empire's overlord in such a bind. As Yuan Tishin remembered when Zero Wing had been small and weak, he couldn't help his rueful sigh. Zero Wing's developmental history was practically a miracle. After today, Zero Wing would qualify to stand on the same stage as the various superpowers. It was no longer an ordinary guild that could so easily be slaughtered. While the secret pavilion prepared to garrison in Stone Forest Town, Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor's headquarters in the Dark Knight Empire were in an uproar. How did Zero Wing do it? Both super first-rate guilds' upper echelons were overwhelmed with shock and curiosity when they learned of Stone Forest Town's new location in the bottomless abyss. None of them had ever thought that Zero Wing would be so capable. Heart, I want you and Lingsha to visit Zero Wing's headquarters in White River City. Tell them that Unyielding Soul would like to deepen our relationship. Isn't Zero Wing trying to break into the Dark Knight Empire's market? We can offer them some of our central shops in the Empire if they're willing to let us build a temporary residence in Stone Forest Town. Unyielding Soul's guild leader, Silent Soul, commanded after giving the matter some thought. You two have full authority to negotiate those shops' management and sales. When the guild upper echelons in the meeting room heard Silent Soul's decision, they stared at him with dropped jaws. They hadn't thought that their guild leader would willingly grant Unyielding Heart and Mu Lingsha so much authority. Financial strength was the most important aspect when running a guild as large as Unyielding Soul. The profits from the guild's shops were particularly crucial. Shops were a guild's lifeblood, and the fact that Silent Soul had given Unyielding Heart and Mu Lingsha control of the guild's lifeblood meant he had granted them the authority that was only second to his, the guild leader. Unyielding Soul wasn't the only superpower interested in cooperating with Zero Wing. Superpowers throughout God's domain promptly made their way to Star Moon Kingdom's White River City as well. Chapter 2146. General Trend. Ancient Undead Country. Psychedelic Forest. How can this be? Utter shock assaulted Bright Dawn as he read the latest report on Zero Wing. It had only been a few hours since his encounter with Black Flame, yet in that time, the swordsman had relocated Stone Forest Town into the bottomless abyss? No matter how he looked at it, the situation felt like a dream. Not even Starlink dared to delve too deeply into the bottomless abyss, but Black Flame had established a town within the regional dungeon in a matter of hours. Starlink had invested an astronomical amount of manpower and resources to secure a fortress in the ancient undead country, but none of its effort could even compare to Black Flame's alone. Many superpowers had already begun to make their way to White River City to negotiate with Zero Wing due to the guild's latest success. Needless to say, they all wanted a cut of Stone Forest Town's shares and a temporary guild residence within the town. If Zero Wing agreed and accepted these superpowers' help, Starlink wouldn't be able to continue its assault against the enemy guild. Moreover, Starlink's development would descend into the pits of hell due to Stone Forest Town's prosperity. As a result, Lu Xinglua had ordered Bright Dawn to use everything Starlink had to destroy or capture Stone Forest Town before Zero Wing could stabilize its position in the bottomless abyss. Has something happened, Vice Guild Leader? The assassin beside Bright Dawn asked curiously when he saw his commander's sneer. Good news. Wonderful news. Bright Dawn said, laughing. Black Flame had humiliated him earlier, and he hadn't expected to find a chance to take revenge so soon. Why wouldn't he be excited? Good news. The assassin gave Bright Dawn an odd look. MHM. The guild leader has commanded me to deal with Stone Forest Town. Moreover, I get to mobilize the guild's full strength. Bright Dawn explained. All of it. The news shocked the assassin. He had already learned about Stone Forest Town's relocation to the Bottomless Abyss since it had sparked a commotion among Starlink's members. Naturally, the news had shocked them all. However, Lu Xingluo's command to mobilize the guild's full strength against the town was even more unexpected. The various superpowers had far more influence than ordinary guilds, and the guild typically only mobilized a fraction of its strength for any of its operations. Even when Starlink had targeted Unyielding Soul, for example, it had only used a small fraction of its true power. Yet now, Starlink wanted to turn every weapon in its arsenal against a non-superpower like Zero Wing. That's right. Everything. Bright Dawn nodded as he grinned wickedly. I had expected to wait a long time before I had a chance to claim vengeance. I hadn't expected that I'd get to move against that bastard so soon. Hopefully, Black Flame doesn't run from me too quickly. Dealing with an established town was normally even a headache for superpowers like Starlink. But if Starlink employed the guild's full power, taking down a guild town would be a piece of cake. Not even advanced towns would pose much of a challenge. Furthermore, Stone Forest Town had just completed its transfer. Its defenses weren't as strong as usual since hardly any players currently occupied the town. Although not a lot of players could traverse the Bottomless Abyss's complex terrain at once, destroying or capturing a town didn't require a full army. A sufficient number of peak experts and powerful tools would be enough to complete the task. Notify the fortress and have them deliver this list of items. I also want you to summon our old monsters and all of the peak experts in the fortress. Bright Dawn commanded. The assassin's eyes glowed as he began to contact the necessary personnel. Although Bright Dawn was responsible for handling the guild's affairs in the ancient undead country, the peak experts and old monsters in the fortress weren't under his control, not to mention the tools within the fortress. Every one of those tools would be a strategic missile on an open battlefield. They simply shouldn't be used unless absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, a team of 100-plus players used the undead forest trees as cover while they observed Stone Forest Town. Boss, you really are impressive. Sparing and following the Purple Shadow Adventurer team actually led us to Zero Wing Stone Forest Town. A level 68, blue-clad assassin congratulated as he watched Purple Shadow's members enter the town. Zero Wing has certainly proven capable, transferring a guild town here. Not even our Sky Dragon House could accomplish such a feat. A man in crimson armor commented as he stared at the town in admiration. If Xueqi were present, he'd likely be shocked to hear the conversation between these two players. Sky Dragon House was one of the Fire Dragon Empire's 3 overlords and a veteran super guild. It was far stronger than ordinary super first-rate guilds. Even the up-and-coming Starlink would have to bow its head before Sky Dragon House. At its peak in Xueqi's previous life, Sky Dragon House had even been known as one of God's Domain's top 10 guilds. The virtual gaming world wasn't the same as it had been in the past. Countless corporations now invested in the industry, and becoming one of God's Domain's top 10 guilds meant that it stood among the best of the best. Not even ordinary super guilds had any hope of comparing to Sky Dragon House. Only a transcendental existence like the Secret Pavilion could contend with such a powerhouse. What should we do next, boss? The blue-clad assassin asked. We're not just here to pay a visit, are we? Of course not, the crimson-armored man said, laughing. Zero Wing is quite impressive to pull off such a move, but the Bottomless Abyss isn't fit for the likes of such a small guild. Moreover, Zero Wing hasn't learned that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Rather than let other powers get their hands on Stone Forest Town, we should claim it. I was hoping you'd say that, the blue-clad assassin said as he licked his lips, anticipation and killing intent flashing in his eyes. As far as he was concerned, treasure only belonged to those with the strength to keep it. Zero Wing, meanwhile, didn't qualify to lay claim to such a precious place like Stone Forest Town. But we should wait for a little while longer, the crimson-armored man decided. Wait? Why? The assassin asked, confused. Right now, we aren't the only ones here, the crimson-armored man said, smiling as he gestured to a team hiding on a nearby plateau. Players from Pride Empire. The assassin in blue frowned when he noticed the other players. Pride Empire was another of the Fire Dragon Empire's overlords, and it wasn't any weaker than the Sky Dragon House. Finding its guild members here wasn't good news for them. They're likely thinking the same thing that we are. If we make the first move, they'll try to take advantage of the situation, the Crimson Armored Man said. But we can't just wait here, boss. Plenty of superpowers have set their sights on Stone Forest Town. If we don't move quickly, securing the town will become more of a challenge, the assassin complained. Before the man in crimson armor could reply, he received a message. Sure enough, they've discovered us, the Crimson Armored Man reported, chuckling as he read the message. Moreover, they're taking the initiative to ask for our help in securing Stone Forest Town. What? They actually want to cooperate? The assassin was surprised to hear it. The Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire were rivals. Although their two guilds had very few public confrontations, they constantly fought in secret. This could work too. Rather than waste each other's time, we might as well work together to claim the town before more competitors show up, the Crimson Armored Man said after giving the matter some thought. Tell everyone to get ready. Understood. Although the blue-clad assassin didn't like the idea of working with his guild's rival, he had no choice but to obey his commander's orders. Under the Crimson Armored Man's command, the team from Sky Dragon House snuck towards Stone Forest Town while the Pride Empire's members did the same. Chapter 2147. Stone Forest Town promoted. When the Purple Shadow team followed Xueqi into Stone Forest Town and saw the large number of level 70+ monsters wandering outside of its walls, they were flabbergasted. Experts like Late Autumn and Colorful Fruit were especially stunned since they knew far more than the adventurer team's ordinary members. They recognized how amazing it was to establish a guild town in the bottomless abyss. With this advantage, Zero Wing would likely become the leading force in the God Mode regional dungeon. As they entered the town, the mana density within surprised them further. It was simply unprecedented. Moreover, Stone Forest Town's mana wasn't nearly as chaotic as it was in the rest of the bottomless abyss. Not only did the mana soothe their spirits, but it also made them feel far more agile. They felt that they could easily exhibit even greater combat power than outside of the regional dungeon. If they could train their combat techniques, skills, and spells here, their efforts would yield far better results than normal. Weapons and equipment might be very important, but these external factors weren't nearly as integral to expert players as internal strength. Commander, the mana in this town has sharpened my senses by at least 10%. If we could train here, our adventurer team's overall strength could reach a whole new level in less than a month. Colorful Fruit exclaimed. Generally, high mana density only allowed players to clear their minds and remain calm under pressure. But once it was dense enough, it could sharpen players' senses as well, although not by much. The fact that Stone Forest Town's mana was so dense that players' 5 senses were 10% more acute than normal was astonishing. Naturally, sharpened senses would be a massive help to players. Not only would players be able to detect their flaws more easily, but players would also be able to notice more than they usually did. To put it simply, players could improve their combat standards far more quickly if they had more acute senses while training. A 10% difference was on par with the difference players experienced when they rose from Tier 1 to Tier 2. I know, Late Autumn replied, smiling bitterly at Colorful Fruit. This place is wonderful, but it also belongs to Zero Wing. A town can only hold so many people, and Zero Wing will prioritize its own members. After all, strength is necessary in God's domain. Outsiders will have to pay a high price if they want to train here. With our adventurer team's current strength, I'm afraid that. Late Autumn quickly realized this town's value. Of all the towns and cities he had seen before, Stone Forest Town was undoubtedly the best place for training. If his adventurer team could train here long-term, he was confident that Purple Shadow would become the Dark Knight Empire's #1 adventurer team. However, enjoying such benefits without paying a steep price would be impossible for non-guild members like them. They were only allowed in Stone Forest Town now because they had accepted Xueqi's commission. Late Autumn doubted that he had the qualifications or connections necessary to negotiate garrisoning his adventurer team in Stone Forest Town long-term. Colorful Fruit, more or less, understood what her commander was trying to say. They had only met WDTH Xueqi by chance, and the swordsman was the only reason that their adventurer team had avoided annihilation. They'd be delusional to think that they could train in a paradise like Stone Forest Town. Stone Forest Town's relocation has just completed, so many of the town's facilities are temporarily unavailable. For now, it's only a resting area for players. Once the town's facilities have been readjusted, you're welcome to return at any time, Xueqi said, chuckling. He had a pretty good idea of what Purple Shadows members had been thinking when he saw their crestfallen expressions. You don't have to do that for us, Guild Leader Black Flame. Our adventurer team hasn't done anything to help Zero Wing, after all. I'm sure your guild members will complain if you let us occupy Zero Wing's resources for nothing. Late Autumn hurriedly rejected the offer. Late Autumn recognized that Xueqi's offer came with good intentions, but that was precisely the reason that he couldn't accept it. I think you've misunderstood. I intended to open Stone Forest Town to the public since the beginning. As long as you're not Zero Wing's enemy, you'll be welcome in the town. Naturally, you will be allowed to train here as long as you become members of Zero Wing's battle arena, Xueqi explained. If he reserved Stone Forest Town for Zero Wing's members, he'd certainly see desirable results. However, doing so would be shallow. First, level 100 wasn't the maximum level in God's domain, and second, the town's growth was far more important than monopolizing its benefits. Are you serious, Guild Leader Black Flame? Colorful Fruit could not help but ask. None of the various major powers would share such a paradise with outsiders, but based on Xueqi's claim, he even planned to cater to ordinary players in the town. This was simply madness. Of course. Why would I joke about something like that? Xueqi asked, chuckling. Xueqi's response rendered Purple Shadows members speechless. He acted as if such a crucial matter were insignificant. Late Autumn couldn't help his budding admiration for both Xueqi and Zero Wing as a whole. Not even the various superpowers would likely be so this generous. While Purple Shadows members rested in Stone Forest Town, Zero Wing's members began to flood in. Yuan Teixin and his entourage arrived shortly after. Due to the agreement with Xueqi, the secret pavilion established a temporary residence in Stone Forest Town, allowing the pavilion's members to teleport to the town freely. However, it was only temporary. After multiple system updates, the main god system had placed many restrictions on temporary residences. One of these restrictions limited the number of players that could teleport to the temporary residence each day. Permanent residences, on the other hand, didn't have such a limit. Hence, before the secret pavilion's members flooded into Stone Forest Town and reached the daily transfer limit, Yuan Teixin led a 100-man expert team, which the secret pavilion had prepared earlier, to the town. Uncle Yuan, we've just received a message from the guild leader. It seems Starlink has made its move. Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire are here as well, and more superpowers are quickly approaching. By the looks of it, they all plan to capture Stone Forest Town before Zero Wing can stabilize its position, Purple Jade reported, frowning as she read the message. Clearly, Starlink was serious about taking the town this time and had armed its forces with the items it had stored in its fortress in the ancient Undead country. To make matters worse, 2 super guilds and a handful of superpowers had designs on the town as well. This was bad news for both Zero Wing and the secret pavilion. It seems that none of them can just sit by and watch. Yuan Teixin chuckled as he caressed his beard. That's enough, old Yuan. The guild leader didn't send you here for a casual chat. Zero Wing can't protect Stone Forest Town with how valuable it has become. We'll have to contribute the most to its defense. Notify Black Flame and inform him that we'll have to renegotiate Stone Forest Town's shares. A white-haired old man reprimanded Yuan. I understand, but I believe it's too soon to discuss that with Zero Wing. We should wait and let Zero Wing realize its predicament. Then, I'll have an advantage in the negotiations, Yuan Teixin said, sighing as he gazed at the distant Zero Wing residence. Although he didn't want to take advantage of the guild, this was the cruel reality of God's domain. Without sufficient strength, one would lose any valuable treasure they obtained to a stronger force. The fact that Xueqi had accomplished this feat was impressive, but Zero Wing had no place in the struggle that would follow. Not long after the secret pavilion's members arrived in Stone Forest Town, Xueqi reached the first underground floor, and the most important location, in Zero Wing's residence. Walking down a dark hall and seeing Zero Wing's flag flutter in its center, Xueqi retrieved the Gold Town promotion order and merged it with the massive magic array on the ground. System: Gold Town promotion order detected. Do you wish to promote Stone Forest Town into a basic city? Promote. Xueqi selected the option without hesitation. Chapter 2148. Another Uproar. Inside Zero Wing's residence in Stone Forest Town. After Xueqi chose to promote Stone Forest Town, two gigantic magic arrays suddenly appeared, one in the air and the other on the ground, enveloping the entirety of the town. The players inside Stone Forest Town could not help but grow nervous at the sight. What's going on? Xueqi looked in confusion at the magic array above him. Although he did not have a great understanding of magic arrays, the one above him was no doubt the largest he had ever seen. Moreover, the mana flowing around it was actually visible. The intensity of its aura also greatly surpassed that of mythic monsters. While everyone was panicking over this sudden development, a system notification suddenly entered the ears of every player inside Stone Forest Town. System: Stone Forest Town has been promoted to a basic city. You will be teleported out of Stone Forest Town in 30 seconds. Everyone in Stone Forest Town immediately fell into a daze upon receiving the system notification, wondering whether or not they had heard wrong. How? Stone Forest Town actually got promoted into a city. No one could believe this was true. The Secret Pavilion's members, in particular, were dumbfounded by this situation. Impossible. To become a city, a town needs not only sufficient defensive structures and an astronomical amount of popularity but also a large number of permanent residents. Stone Forest Town just transferred to this place, so how could it possibly get promoted to a basic city? The white-haired old man from the Secret Pavilion yelled in denial. Everyone else from the Secret Pavilion very much agreed with this old man's words. After all, only a handful of people in the Secret Pavilion was more knowledgeable than this old man about the promotion of a guild town. Moreover, this old man was also one of the publicly acknowledged top 5 master town architects in God's domain, Easy Wind. A master town architect was, basically, a master architect. Although the architect subclass did not seem that amazing and was far from comparable to the forger and alchemist subclasses in terms of popularity, as players progressed in God's domain, the various major powers gained a greater understanding of the purpose of master architects. As a result, they also started placing greater importance on the architect subclass. This was because the development of guild towns often required advanced constructions. Moreover, the planning of a town was also extremely important. If carried out properly, it could accelerate a guild town's development substantially. Meanwhile, the guild towns built using Easy Wind's designs developed 30% faster than guild towns that used the default designs. Moreover, Easy Wind had even designed an advanced construction before. Due to Easy Wind's ability and accomplishments, his position in the Secret Pavilion was superior to even Xueqi's, who was constantly conducting negotiations and leading expeditions for the guild. When it came to discussing the development of guild towns, Easy Wind held more authority than even the Secret Pavilion's vice-guild leaders. In fact, the main reason why the Secret Pavilion had dispatched Easy Wind to Stone Forest Town was to help the town develop much more efficiently and become a guild city a little sooner. Now, however, it was obvious that Easy Wind had just wasted a trip in visiting Stone Forest Town. Before everyone could react to the system notification, they were already outside Stone Forest Town. Meanwhile, after snapping out of their daze, Zero Wing's members promptly burst out in enthusiastic acclamation. The second city! Our guild has a second city! Even super guilds don't have a guild city established in a neutral map right now. At this point, God's domain still didn't have that many guild cities. Moreover, practically all of these guild cities were owned by top-ranking superpowers. Now, however, Zero Wing actually possessed 2 guild cities. More importantly, Zero Wing's second city was established in the Bottomless Abyss, a God mode regional dungeon. Zero Wing could earn a fortune just by collecting entry fees in Stone Forest Town. After all, a guild city had much more space than a guild town. Let alone accommodating 1 million players, even accommodating 5 million players wouldn't be a problem. Previously, everyone from Zero Wing was still worried about whether Stone Forest Town could accommodate all the guild members who wished to grind in the Bottomless Abyss. Now, however, that no longer seemed to be a problem. Meanwhile, outside the forest, some distance away from Stone Forest Town, The members of Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire automatically halted their advance when they saw the two gigantic magic arrays enveloping Stone Forest Town and a large number of players suddenly materializing outside the town. Old Sheng, any information on your side? So many people actually got teleported out of the town. Is Stone Forest Town off limits to players? A tall, middle-aged man with short hair from Pride Empire's team asked as he looked at the crimson-armored man standing beside him. How would I know? Not to mention, since when is Pride Empire's information network slower than Sky Dragon House's? The crimson-armored man replied, rolling his eyes at the short-haired man dressed in exquisite mage robes. If the upper echelons of the Fire Dragon Empire's various large guilds were here, they would most likely be stupefied. After all, Pride Empire's Ghost Mage, Zhan Baya, and Sky Dragon House's Meteor Hammer, Shang Wuji, were actually working together. If news of this matter spread, it would definitely shock the entire Fire Dragon Empire. Ghost Mage and Falling Meteor were both capable generals of their respective guilds. Their positions were not the slightest bit inferior to vice guild leaders in their respective guilds. They were also monstrous existences in terms of strength. If these two monsters cooperated, even superpowers would have to be extremely careful of them. Meanwhile, shortly after their exchange, both of them received a message at the same time. After they read their respective messages, both of them had a very startled expression on their faces. What kind of background does Zero Wing possess? It actually managed to promote Stone Forest Town into a basic city. Zhan Baya could not help but gaze at the distant Stone Forest Town in puzzlement. According to the information that Pride Empire acquired, Stone Forest Town had definitely been promoted into a basic city. Pride Empire had a guild city of its own, so it knew just how difficult promoting a guild town to a guild city was. Pride Empire had mobilized all its resources in order to attain its guild city. Yet, now, Zero Wing had actually succeeded in promoting Stone Forest Town into a guild city. Old Zhan, what does your side plan to do? Shang Wuji asked after he finished reading his own message. They gave me only 4 words, Zhan Baya replied. No matter the cost. Mine said roughly the same thing too, Shang Wuji said, a bitter smile on his face. However, a basic city is different from an advanced town. The difficulty of capturing Stone Forest Town is many times greater than before. Only powers that owned a guild city would understand just how formidable it was. It was not only a gigantic ATM but also an impenetrable fortress. Just the city's built-in defensive magic array was already enough to render current players utterly powerless, not to mention the large number of high-tiered NPC soldiers inside the city. Fortunately, promoting a town did not grant a protection period. A newly promoted city could be snatched away as soon as its promotion process ended. Since that is the case, let's start moving fast. Otherwise, once the Secret Pavilion's members arrive, we'll have a much more difficult time capturing the newly promoted Stone Forest City. Zhan Baya suggested after hearing that Sky Dragon House harbored the same intentions as Pride Empire. All right. News of Stone Forest Town's promotion should have spread already. Delaying any longer will give those several superpowers time to get here, Shang Wuji said, nodding as he shifted his gaze to the Zero Wing members crowded outside Stone Forest Town. He then turned back to look at his team and said, Everyone, split up and move in parties. We have to end the battle as quickly as possible. At this point, Zero Wing was no longer their main enemy but the superpowers that were currently en route. What they needed to do now was take care of Zero Wing expeditiously before those superpowers arrived. After obeying Shang Wuji's order, Sky Dragon House's and Pride Emperor's members immediately charged towards Stone Forest Town. Chapter 2149. Divide. Uncle Yuan, this is bad. Stone Forest has just become a city. Its foundations have yet to be stabilized. Now is the perfect time to attack it. Those superpowers that held off before are now going all out in sending manpower to this place. With just the few of us here, I'm afraid we'll have a difficult time protecting Stone Forest, Purple Jade said, a serious expression on her face as she read the latest report from the guild. Previously, although various superpowers were tempted into action by Stone Forest Town, they had dispatched only a small portion of their strength to capture it. However, due to Stone Forest Town's promotion, Starlink wasn't the only superpower going all out anymore. Other superpowers now intended to pull out all the stops for seizing Stone Forest Town. Even one superpower going all out would be enough to give the secret pavilion a headache, all the more a group of superpowers doing so. It might be fine if the upcoming battle took place in the outside world. However, they were inside the bottomless abyss. Dispatching ordinary experts here would be utterly meaningless. They would just become liabilities. Only experts at the refinement realm standard or above could provide useful combat power. However, the total number of refinement realm experts, the various superpowers, had easily surpassed that of the secret pavilion. This black flame. Why didn't he inform us of this promotion beforehand? We are in a tight spot now. At this moment, Xueqi was also suffering a huge headache over this matter. Prior to Stone Forest's promotion, the town provided Zero Wing with a significant number of advantages in the bottomless abyss, but it did not put the guild in an absolutely advantageous position. After all, a town could accommodate only a very limited number of players. However, with Stone Forest Town's promotion, Zero Wing now essentially held full control over the entire bottomless abyss. How could this situation not make the various superpowers desperate and force them to go all out to capture Stone Forest Town? With this, even the secret pavilion would not be absolutely certain of defending Stone Forest Town. Uncle Yuan, the scouts we dispatched into the periphery have discovered Sky Dragon House's and Pride Empire's members. They're moving in our direction and will arrive in less than 5 minutes, Purple Jade said anxiously as she read her subordinate's report. They've finally appeared? Do you know who's leading them? Xueqi was not particularly surprised by this revelation. After all, the secret pavilion had long known about the presence of these two super guilds in the bottomless abyss. Otherwise, the secret pavilion wouldn't have sent a team to Stone Forest Town as soon as teleportation to the town became available. They're Xueqi and Zhan Baya. By the looks of it, the two of them are working together, Purple Jade said, her complexion darkening. Xueqi and Zhan Baya were well-known monster-level experts in God's domain. Moreover, the teams they led were only second to their respective guilds' main forces. Even the team that the secret pavilion sent to Stone Forest Town would have trouble dealing with just one of these teams, let alone both at the same time. Why is it them? Xueqi's face sank when he heard the names of these two people. We don't have a choice. Jade, relay this matter to the guild leader immediately and have him send over as many players as possible. Also, go and stop those two. I'll meet with Black Flame to notify him about the severity of the matter. Hopefully, he'll make the correct decision quickly. The situation was now out of the secret pavilion's control. The only way left to defend Stone Forest Town was to get Xueqi to hand over more of Stone Forest Town's shares and use these additional shares to recruit other superpowers into their alliance. Otherwise, only death awaited them. I'll head over immediately. Purple Jade nodded. She then led the secret pavilion's team to stop Xueqi and Zhan Baya. Meanwhile, under Xueqi and Zhan Baya's command, Sky Dragon House's and Pride Empire's members were like fierce tigers that had just been released from their cages. Unlike the combat methods usually employed by players fighting in teams, Sky Dragon House's and Pride Empire's members split into 6-man parties, which moved independently of each other as they traversed the Undead forest. They did not try to focus their strength on a single point to break through Zero Wing's defenses. From an outsider's perspective, this method of combat would look very silly, as it allowed others to exploit it very easily. However, those who were aware of these two teams' history would understand that these teams were not executing such a combat method out of foolishness at all. Instead, their doing so was due to their absolute confidence in their strength. Moreover, when traveling through a forest, players could move much more quickly in small parties instead of large teams. This was especially true for the players Xueqi and Zhan Baya led. They were akin to lively monkeys as they traversed the Undead forest, moving very swiftly and leaving no traces behind. When these two teams got within 500 yards of the city and were about to exit into the clearing that surrounded it, Purple Jade's 100-man team halted their advance. Little Missy, although you are the secret pavilion's prodigy, do you really think you can stop both our teams with just these few people? Xueqi, who currently perched atop a tree, asked as he looked down at Purple Jade. He did not hurry to take action. Instead, he quietly observed the young woman standing in the clearing before him. I have constantly been hearing that the secret pavilion has produced an amazing genius recently. After getting a look myself, you really are extraordinary. You're already a peak expert at such a young age. Unfortunately, I'm afraid you're still not enough to stop the both of us, Zhan Baya said as he walked out of the forest. Although Shang Wuji and Zhan Baya had spoken in very amicable tones, the auras they radiated were incomparably frightening. Even the many refinement realm experts standing behind Purple Jade felt the threat of death when bathed in this aura. In addition, the secret pavilion's members could also sense many other bone-chilling killing intents being directed at them from the forest. Every one of these killing intents was enough to make their bodies shudder. They felt that if they let their guard down for even a moment, they would definitely die a tragic death here. At this moment, the secret pavilion's members were also certain that, if not for them representing the secret pavilion, Shang Wuji's and Zhan Baya's teams would have long since taken action. So, these are the Heavenly Demon Team and Horned Dragon Team led by Ghost Mage and Meteor Hammer? Purple Jade automatically grew vigilant as she observed the numerous parties hidden within the forest. Just the peak experts she could sense before her right now already numbered as many as 15. Moreover, unlike herself, these peak experts had already been in the Void Realm for a long time and had much more combat experience than she did. Not only were they much more experienced at fighting against experts that had equal or superior combat standards, but their control over their five senses was also far superior to her own. Not to mention, every member of Shang Wuji's and Zhan Baya's teams boasted top-tier equipment. Even the weakest piece of equipment on them was level 65 fine gold rank, with many of them fully geared in level 65 dark gold equipment. There were even 10-odd experts with epic items. As for Shang Wuji and Zhan Baya, each of them sported 4 epic items, with the rest being level 65 dark gold equipment. If these two teams were working together, even superpowers would receive a rough beating if they did not take the two teams seriously. Not to mention, both these teams had powerful super guilds as backing. They did not have to fear any repercussions for their actions the way independent players did. After calming herself, Purple Jade smiled and said, "This is a misunderstanding. I am here only to receive you too. I have no intention of fighting." "It seems the secret pavilion understands the current situation," Shang Wuji laughed. "Say it then. How do you plan on dividing Stone Forest Town's shares?" "I'll state it clearly first. Pride Empire wants 30%, Zhan Baya declared. "Since old Zhan has said so, then Sky Dragon House will settle for 30% as well. As the secret pavilion is the first to occupy Stone Forest Town, it'll get 40%. I believe the secret pavilion won't have any complaints about this, right?" Shang Wuji said. The words of these two people immediately rendered Purple Jade speechless. Their combined demand was actually for 60% of Stone Forest Town's shares. Had these two people belonged to any other superpower, they definitely wouldn't speak so boldly to the secret pavilion. However, the super guilds these two represented were extremely strong and not afraid of any power in God's domain. In fact, if she were not representing the secret pavilion but some other superpower instead, these two people would not have demanded just 60%. If your secret pavilion has any opinions about this matter, speak up. However, you are not allowed to touch this bottom line," Shang Wuji said sternly when he saw Purple Jade hesitating to speak. Although Zhan Baya did not make any additional comments, his attitude made it clear that he shared the same sentiments as Shang Wuji. As these two people were waiting for Purple Jade's reply, a man suddenly appeared from another corner of the forest. This man wore a quaint, old cloak and had 2 exquisite long swords hanging at his waist. He gave the impression of a down-and-out swordsman that was just passing by. "Since you too want Stone Forest Town shares, aren't you going to ask Zero Wing whether this is fine or not?" Chapter 2150. Lacking Qualifications. "Who are you?" Shang Wuji's gaze turned chilly as he looked askance at Shi Feng. As soon as Shang Wuji spoke, the Sky Dragon House members hiding within the forest directed their gaze toward Shi Feng. The cold killing intent they radiated could scare peak experts. Even monster-level experts would most likely grow wary upon sensing such an intense killing intent. What happened next, however, stunned both Sky Dragon House's and Pride Empire's members. Despite having such an intense killing intent directed at himself, Shi Feng remained at ease as he strolled toward Shang Wuji, his demeanor making it seem as if the intense killing intent did not exist at all. "Black Flame," Shi Feng replied curtly. "So you're the Sword King." Upon hearing Shi Feng's answer, Shang Wuji immediately looked at Shi Feng squarely. If the person Shang Wuji was dealing with were merely the guild leader of a first-rate guild, he wouldn't have bothered taking a second glance at the other party. After all, in terms of strength or status, he was on another level altogether compared to a first-rate guild's guild leader. However, Xuefeng was different. Xuefeng was a bona fide apex expert, someone of equal strength. The only reason why Shang Wuji had treated Purple Jade amicably before was the fact that she was the Secret Pavilion's representative. The Secret Pavilion was a transcendental power in the virtual gaming world, and it very rarely participated in the struggle between the various superpowers. It mainly moved for money and information gathering. However, the Secret Pavilion was not weak by any means. After all, it was impossible for a power to transcend without sufficient strength. In reality, even Sky Dragon House feared the Secret Pavilion greatly and would normally avoid coming into conflict with it. Sky Dragon House had decided to offend the Secret Pavilion only because too much was at stake this time. Guild leader Black Flame, since you've arrived as well, let's just speak frankly with each other, Shang Wuji said, chuckling. The current stone forest is no longer something you can afford to hold. Even the Secret Pavilion can't do so. After all, there are simply too many superpowers eyeing this place. If you wish to hold the city, your only choice is to work with us. We've already stated the amount of shares we want. Each of our guilds wants 30%. As for the remaining 40%, you can decide how you want to split it with the Secret Pavilion. Our guilds won't mind whatever decision you make. That's right. This is our bottom line. If negotiations fail, then we'll simply switch to another method to negotiate, Zhan Baya said, nodding. He then turned to look at Purple Jade and continued, however, I'm afraid the end result then will be undesirable to the Secret Pavilion. Although Zhan Baya also valued experts like Xuefeng highly, in front of the various superpowers, Xuefeng alone would be helpless to change anything. In Zhan Baya's calculations, Xuefeng didn't have any authority in their negotiations at all. The one actually in control of Stone Forest Town should be the Secret Pavilion. Meanwhile, Xuefeng's appearance here was only a negotiating tactic for the Secret Pavilion to gain more benefits. Guild leader Black Flame, both Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire are super guilds with extraordinary strength. Both of them are far stronger than even the current Starlink. Now that the two of them are working together, if it really comes down to a fight, what with the interference of other superpowers, the outcome will not be pleasing, Purple Jade said. She naturally understood what Zhan Baya was trying to say. Moreover, as a core member of the Secret Pavilion, she understood very clearly just how frightening these two super guilds were. However, Xuefeng didn't know this, so she needed to explain things to him. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, as soon as Purple Jade finished speaking, Xuefeng turned his gaze toward Zhan Baya. Bottom line. Xuefeng chuckled. Isn't this something meant to be surpassed? Also, you want to take Stone Forest Town's shares? I'm afraid you're still not qualified to do so. The atmosphere in the area immediately hit rock bottom. As for Purple Jade, she nearly fainted from anger when she heard Xuefeng's words. Her intention had been to let Xuefeng understand how powerful the guilds backing Shang Wuji and Zhan Baya were, and have him appease these two people first. That way, they would still have hopes of negotiating for better terms afterward. Now, however, not qualified? Since that is the case, everyone, let's show guild leader Black Flame whether our Pride Empire is actually qualified or not. Zhan Baya growled as he waved his hand. Immediately, the Heavenly Demon team members hidden in the forest sprang into action. Over 20 level 66+ melee experts instantly surrounded and attacked Xuefeng. The coordination between these melee experts was excellent. They evenly split their attacks into 4 stages, with every member taking on a specific role in the assault. Some focused on executing defensive maneuvers, and some focused on offense. As veterans of the battlefield, their assault was void of any flaws that could be taken advantage of. Even domain realm monsters would have a headache dealing with such a coordinated attack. It seems he is still too young. He must think that nobody can stop him, now that he has reached the domain realm. Shang Wuji sent Xuefeng a look of pity when he saw the coordinated assault of Pride Empire's experts. It was very rare for someone to reach the domain realm at Xuefeng's age. Hence, those that did manage to accomplish such a feat would generally feel that they were invincible existences and would not put anybody in their eyes. Unfortunately, Xuefeng's opponent this time was the Heavenly Demon team, a team that constantly fought monster-level experts. It was entirely different from the expert teams of other superpowers, which possessed only extraordinary combat power but not experience fighting monster-level experts. The Heavenly Demon Team's members understood very clearly not only the combat methods of domain realm experts, but also how to counter such combat methods. Moreover, the leaders of the 20-plus melee players attacking Xueqi right now were two peak experts that were just one step away from reaching the domain realm. Either of them was more than capable of fighting domain realm experts to a standstill for quite some time. If they coordinated with each other and received aid from other teammates, they were fully capable of taking down a domain realm expert. Hence, whenever the Heavenly Demon Team succeeded in surrounding a domain realm expert, the fight generally ended with the domain realm expert's defeat. If a monster-level expert from the older generation came across the Heavenly Demon Team, they would generally pay attention to their positioning. They definitely wouldn't allow the Heavenly Demon Team to surround them. However, Xueqi was far too young. Furthermore, he was someone that came from a minor power that had no background whatsoever, so it was normal for him to be ignorant of the Heavenly Demon Team. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have committed such a low-level mistake. Meanwhile, when Purple Jade saw that Xueqi was surrounded, her complexion darkened immediately. She was well aware of just how powerful the Heavenly Demon Team was and the team's many exploits. Hence, she knew that Xueqi was now in an extremely precarious situation. She immediately unsheathed her sword, intending to reinforce him. However, before she could even take a step forward, she suddenly felt a chilling gaze directed at herself and the threat of imminent death. Her body froze up on instinct. "Little Missy, I advise you not to take action. This matter is between Zero Wing and Pride Empire. If you make a move, then I'll have no choice but to take action as well," Shang Wuji warned slowly. Upon hearing this, Purple Jade had no choice but to abandon her thoughts of helping Xueqi. Judging by Shang Wuji's phrasing, she deduced that there was still ground for recovery. This fight was being regarded as only a small friction between Zero Wing and Pride Empire. If she were to intervene, however, the fight would take on a whole different meaning. The secret pavilion would be standing in direct opposition to both Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire. Then, there would no longer be any room for negotiations. When Purple Jade resumed her previous stance, Shang Wuji nodded in approval before returning his gaze to Xueqi. He was eager to see just how far Xueqi had progressed in the domain realm. At their standard, strength could no longer be determined using common sense. Even if Xueqi was killed multiple times today and lost a significant amount of progress, he could still climb back up to prominence one day. After all, opportunities that ordinary experts found hard to attain could be easily secured by experts of their standard. In fact, domain realm experts could almost certainly secure any opportunities they came across. Their levels and equipment standard wouldn't pose a hindrance to them. This was also the reason why the various superpowers abhorred dealing with domain realm experts. In the next moment, 2 peak experts and 6 flowing water realm experts from the Heavenly Demon Team launched a pincer attack on Xueqi. The 2 peak experts focused only on offense while the 6 flowing water realm experts divided their roles between offense and defense. As for the other melee players, they focused on preventing the swordsman from escaping the encirclement. They were all ready to trade blow for blow with him. When dealing with a peak expert that abandoned defense and focused solely on offense, even domain realm experts would have to tread carefully. Normally, the best way for domain realm experts to cope with such suicidal peak experts was to temporarily go on the defensive and wait for an opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Now, however, Xueqi had to deal with not only 2 void realm experts and 3 flowing water realm experts, all of whom were attacking him, hell-bent on mutual destruction, but also 3 flowing water realm experts defending these 5 suicidal experts. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, even when the great swords of the 2 peak experts were about to land on Xueqi's body, the swordsman still showed no signs of wanting to dodge the attacks at all. Instead, he brandished his 2 swords and greeted the incoming attacks in battle. 2 bright flashes entered everyone's eyes, followed by 2 loud metallic clangs. In the next moment, both peak experts abruptly went flying over a dozen yards. Their bodies crashed heavily into the ground, their HP bars decreasing by a sizable chunk. The arms of both peak experts also trembled violently as they stiffened up. Chapter 2151. Slaying the Heavenly Demon Team. The instant the 2 peak experts went flying, everyone in the Heavenly Demon Team was stunned. The 6 flowing water experts supporting the 2 peak experts even forgot to attack Xueqi. They simply stared at the man before them in utter disbelief. If the 2 players Xueqi had just sent flying were any other peak expert, The 6 would, at most, be a little surprised. However, they knew exactly how powerful those 2 peak experts were. The 2 peak experts' combat standards aside, their weapons and equipment alone were already considered the best among the best in the current God's domain. Not only were both peak experts fully geared in level 65 Dark Gold equipment, but both of them also wielded epic weapons. Moreover, both peak experts were berserkers. In a competition of strength, they could clash directly even with their guild's domain realm experts, who boasted 3 or 4 epic weapons and equipment. Despite all that, Xueqi not only sent both of these peak experts flying but even caused their arms to stiffen up. How is his strength so high? Jean Baya was also stunned as he stared at Xueqi. The 2 peak experts that went flying could exhibit strength rivaling great lords of the same level. They could even hold their own against strength-based great lords in a frontal confrontation. However, Xueqi effortlessly nullified the combination attack of the 2 peak experts, and sent both of them flying. Only Grand Lords of the same level could accomplish such a feat. A monster-level expert with the strength of a Grand Lord of the same level. After Jean Baya thought up to this point, his complexion turned incomparably grim. Before the Heavenly Demon team members could react to the unexpected development, Xueqi took a step forward, the 2 swords in his hands suddenly transforming into dazzling streaks of lights. In the next moment, a beautiful lotus of light bloomed around him. Swords transmigration. 12 sword lights instantly cut through the 6 flowing water realm experts standing idly around Xueqi. Although these 6 experts had sensed the attacks, the 12 sword lights were simply far too fast for them to react to. Moreover, the sword lights were accurately aimed at their defensive blind spots. In the end, they could only watch as the sword lights pierced through their bodies. A moment later, all 6 flowing water realm experts collapsed at Xueqi's feet. The entire process had been so quick that the rear line healers didn't even get a chance to start casting their healing spells. So strong! With this kind of speed and strength, even that old thing from our guild might be inferior to him, Shang Wuji exclaimed in astonishment. When Sky Dragon House's members heard Shang Wuji's comment, they could not help but stare at Xueqi in shock and horror. Shang Wuji was one of Sky Dragon House's main pillars. There were only 3 people in the entire guild that Shang Wuji would refer to as an old thing, and they were existences that even their guild leader had to treat with the utmost respect. As for the equipment these 3 people wore, all sorts of guesses were bandied about in the guild. However, the consensus was that each of these 3 people had at least 7 pieces of epic equipment on them. No doubt, they stood at the apex of God's domain in terms of equipment standards. Now, however, Shang Wuji actually said that Xueqi surpassed one of these 3 people in basic attributes. How could such a thing be possible? Nevertheless, these words had come out of Shang Wuji's mouth directly, so the Horned Dragon team's members had no choice but to accept them. After all, Shang Wuji was one of Sky Dragon House's monster-level experts. His insight and knowledge far surpassed their own. Since he said so, then there was a 90% chance that it was true. Only, they simply could not figure out how a small guild like Zero Wing managed to equip Xueqi to such an extent. Players needed to have compatibility with their weapons and equipment in order to wield them properly. Epic weapons and equipment were no exception to this. Players could strengthen their basic attributes by using weapons and equipment that were of a higher quality but had low compatibility. However, by doing so, they would not only fail to increase their combat power but even decrease it instead. From Xueqi's performance, it was evident that he was using weapons and equipment that were compatible with him. However, obtaining 7 or more pieces of epic equipment that had high compatibility was extremely difficult. The first reason was the rarity of epic items. The second reason was the high repetition rate of certain equipment parts. At this stage of the game, first-rate guilds might have 20 or 30 epic items, but the majority of these were for the head, top, and legs. Items for other parts of the body, such as capes, belts, and pauldrons, were in the minority. Some first-rate guilds might not even have epic equipment for these parts. Hence, players faced extreme difficulty obtaining 7 or more pieces of epic equipment that were compatible with them. Members of super guilds were no exception. Meanwhile, after Xueqi killed the 6 flowing water realm experts from the Heavenly Demon team, Jean Baya no longer dared to take the situation lightly. He immediately took out a bottle of purple gold potion. The potion's bottle was made out of mana stone, and the potion exuded dense mana that was palpable even from several dozen yards away. 4 other players from the Heavenly Demon team also took out the same potion and drank it. The instant the 5 players drank the potion, a purple-gold divine rune suddenly appeared on their heads. The aura their bodies radiated also skyrocketed in intensity. What? The Heavenly Demon team actually prepared 5 divine protection potions? The corners of Shang Wuji's mouth twitched slightly when he saw the potion the 5 players consumed. The divine protection potion could be obtained only from the Fire Dragon Empire's ancient ruins. The value of each bottle rivaled that of an epic item, and even the Horned Dragon team he led had only 2 bottles prepared. Players who consumed the divine protection potion would temporarily receive a god's blessing, which improved their life ratings by a significant margin. Of course, the potion was only effective for players at Tier 3 or below. Normally, when Tier 2 players consumed the potion, they would gain basic attributes close to the Tier 3 standard. Now that 5 players from the Heavenly Demon team had consumed the divine protection potion, the team essentially gained 5 semi-Tier 3 players. It should be known that the difference between tiers was massive in God's domain. Although the 5 players from the Heavenly Demon team could only be considered semi-Tier 3 players right now, the combat power they could exhibit would still surpass anything Tier 2 players could hope to achieve. Not to mention, of the 5 players that consumed the divine protection potion, 4 were peak experts, and 1 was a monster-level expert. In the next moment, the 5 players started fighting it out with Xueqi, the attacks of both sides wreaking great destruction on their surroundings. From afar, the fight between these 6 players looked more like a battle between monsters than one between players. Right now, any one of the 5 players from the Heavenly Demon team had the combat power to defeat monster-level experts. They were akin to strategic missiles in a field battle, able to slay a 1,000-man team of ordinary experts all by themselves. They were frightening existences that were basically unstoppable. Due to the high standards of the battle, the Heavenly Demon team's other members couldn't interfere in the battle at all, left to watch from the sidelines. At this moment, however, Xueqi was equally terrifying. Despite facing the joint assault of these 5 players, Xueqi was actually only at a slight disadvantage. Everyone, hold out a little longer. This place is the bottomless abyss. The stamina consumption here is several times higher than in the outside world. He won't last very long if he keeps on moving at such a pace. Jean Baya said, sneering as he watched Xueqi fervently dodging their attacks. Once his stamina runs out, he'll die. Currently, Xueqi's defense was practically perfect. He consistently deflected all of their attacks, making them feel as if they were pointlessly striking the air. As a result, each attack barely did him any damage. However, Xueqi had been fighting against them at full capacity all this time. His 5 senses and mental state were constantly being pushed to their very limits. Doing so would place a tremendous burden on his stamina and concentration. What with the greatly increased stamina and concentration consumption in the bottomless abyss, the swordsman wouldn't be able to last very long in this battle. In contrast, the 5 of them received a qualitative improvement to their life ratings after consuming the divine protection potion. Naturally, their stamina and concentration had received improvements as well. Not to mention, they were expending far less stamina and concentration than Xueqi. It was only a matter of time before they whittled him to death. Is that so? Looking at the smug expression on Jean Baya's face, Xueqi leaped back, pulling away from the Heavenly Demon team. You want to run? It won't be that easy. When Xueqi retreated, Jean Baya immediately commanded, activate the Void Magic Array. Do not let him escape, no matter what. In the next moment, 24 or so members from the Heavenly Demon team each took out a magic array scroll from their bags. They then activated the scrolls, trapping Xueqi inside a magic barrier. Black Flame is finished now. The Void Magic Array not only prevents players from escaping but also suppresses their basic attributes by roughly 20%. Shang Wuji sighed involuntarily when he saw the Void Magic Array being deployed. However, I'm afraid only a few people in God's domain are capable of forcing the Heavenly Demon team to go to such lengths. Black Flame can be proud of this battle. The Homed Dragon team's members also expressed their agreement with Shang Wuji's words. The Heavenly Demon team was Pride Empire's trump card team, only second to the guild's main force. The team had killed plenty of monster-level experts before. However, the experts that had managed to force the Heavenly Demon team to go all out could be counted on the fingers of one hand. If news of this matter were to spread in the Fire Dragon Empire, it would definitely cause a sensation in the entire empire. As soon as Shang Wuji finished speaking, Xueqi suddenly stopped moving. He simply watched quietly as Jean Bailla's group of 5 charged at him. Giving up now that you know you can't get away? Jean Bailla laughed when he saw that Xuefeng had stopped moving. Noisy! Sending a glance at Jean Bailla, Xuefeng activated deep sea meditation and charged forward. Suddenly, Xuefeng's aura transformed. As if he had become a completely different person from before, his aura now was so violent that even the refinement realm experts spectating from the sidelines felt their breath stifled. Moreover, they also felt pressured due to a difference in life rating. Before Xuefeng's life rating, even the life ratings of Jean Bailla's group of 5 seemed insignificant. How is this possible? When Jean Bailla felt Xuefeng's aura, his gut actually warned him that he was no match for Xuefeng. However, just as Jean Bailla was considering retreating, Xuefeng suddenly appeared before him. Tier 2 Taboo Skill. Instant Strike. Swords Transmigration. More than 20 sword lights flew from Xuefeng's swords, so fast that they were imperceptible by the naked eye. When the sword lights vanished, Jean Bailla's group of 5 started collapsing to the ground, one after another. Chapter 2152. Inhuman Combat Power. The entire area sank into utter silence at Jean Bailla's death. The nearby Heavenly Demon team members fell into a daze on the spot. Even the rear-line healers, who had been casting healing spells continuously, froze as they stared at Jean Bailla's corpse. As for Shang Wuji, Purple Jade, and the other onlookers, their eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when they saw this scene. Crap! Is he really a player? At this moment, even Shang Wuji could not help but curse out loud. He simply could not wrap his head around this outcome. Jean Bailla was the commander of the Heavenly Demon team and was nicknamed Ghost Mage. Spells would gain life in his hands. The way he connected and coordinated his spells was something even domain realm experts found difficult. Not to mention, he had also consumed the Divine Protection Potion for this battle. Yet, Xuefeng had still managed to kill Jean Bailla in one hit. Moreover, he had struck so quickly that the latter didn't even have time to use any of his life-saving skills. What did he do? Purple Jade googled reflexively in utter disbelief as she looked at Xuefeng, who was standing proudly on the battlefield. From start to end, the only thing she was certain of was that Xuefeng had suddenly appeared before Jean Bailla's group, followed by a dazzling flash crossing the distance between the two sides. Afterward, Jean Bailla's group of 5 collapsed to the ground. Everything else that happened in between had escaped her 5 senses. It should be known that she had already reached the Void Realm. She could exert her 5 senses to their very limits and clearly perceive her surroundings. Even if an action was too fast for the naked eye, said action couldn't escape all of her senses. Even the old monsters of the secret pavilion couldn't accomplish such a feat. Nevertheless, she had actually failed to perceive Xuefeng's actions. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, after Xuefeng killed Jean Bailla's group of 5, he calmly shifted his gaze to the rest of the Heavenly Demon team and asked, "Do you still want to continue?" Although Xuefeng did not speak very loudly, his voice carried, loud and clear, on the silent battlefield. Upon hearing Xuefeng's words, the Heavenly Demon team members suddenly felt as if they had just received a death sentence, and all fell into despair. Even the 2 remaining peak experts of the team, who were originally preparing to take action, involuntarily lowered their heads. They avoided eye contact with Xuefeng, lest he misunderstand and take it for a challenge. After all, if even a domain realm expert like Jean Bailla was killed so effortlessly, what could the rest of them possibly do against Xuefeng? Choosing to continue the fight now would only result in additional losses for the Heavenly Demon team. Immediately, the magic barrier enveloping Xuefeng crumbled and disintegrated into countless particles of light. This scene stunned Yuan Tiexian, who had just arrived at the site of the battle, his mind unable to figure out what was going on. Previously, after Yuan Tiexian had explained the situation to Xuefeng, Zero Wings Guild leader had rushed toward the location of Sky Dragon House's and Pride Empire's teams without hesitation. As Xuefeng's speed was absurdly fast, Yuan Tiexian soon got left behind. While running toward the battlefield, Yuan Tiexian saw the magic barrier appear and immediately knew that the situation had gone south. Xuefeng must have butted heads with the members of the 2 super guilds. Otherwise, a high-level magic barrier wouldn't have been used in such a place. However, only a few seconds after the magic barrier went up, it actually started disintegrating. Even Yuan Tiexin, with his bountiful experience, could not figure out what had just happened. However, when Yuan Tiexin saw Zhang Baiya's corpse lying on the ground and the looks of despair on the Heavenly Demon team members' faces, he became thoroughly stupefied. Who was Zhang Baiya? What was the Heavenly Demon team? These were things that he, as an elder of the secret pavilion, knew very clearly. Every member of the Heavenly Demon team was an expert among experts. They had fought in countless battles and also attained innumerable achievements for Pride Empire. They were all incomparably arrogant people, and would be more than willing to fight to the death when faced with a powerful foe. They definitely would not shrink back even the slightest bit. Now, however, no matter how Yuan Tiexin looked at the Heavenly Demon team's members, he could not find any trace of fighting spirit on their faces, their eyes brimming with only fear as they looked at Xueqi. Elder Yuan, the secret pavilion is truly amazing. To think you would have such a trump card hidden. You have my sincere admiration, Xueqi said as he approached Yuan Tiexin. With some reluctance he continued, the Horned Dragon team will be giving up on the struggle for Stone Forest Town this time. However, understand that it is only the Horned Dragon team that is giving up. That doesn't mean that Sky Dragon House is giving up as well. When Yuan Tiexin heard Xueqi's words, his expression remained impassive. Inwardly, however, his heart was pounding madly. At this moment, he could not help but wish he could shout out loud and ask what Xueqi had done. Why would the almighty Home Dragon team choose to yield without even putting up a fight? Before Yuan Tiexin could sort out his emotions, Xueqi had already led his team away from the Undead Forest. Xueqi did not dare to stay here for even a moment longer and risk his team's annihilation. Only after confirming that the Horned Dragon team and Heavenly Demon team had left the battlefield did Yuan Tiexin ask Purple Jade about what had happened. Without missing a detail, Purple Jade told Yuan Tiexin everything she saw. So that's the case. If it were up to me, I would most likely have made the same decision as Xueqi. Yuan Tiexin revealed a bitter smile as he looked at the direction Xueqi and the others had taken. The word shocking was no longer enough to describe the fact that Xueqi had instantly killed Zhang Baiya, who had consumed the Divine Protection Potion. Although the Heavenly Demon teams and Horned Dragon teams members were prideful, they were not idiots. If there were even a strand of hope, they would have definitely chosen to fight to the bitter end. However, against absolute power, the numbers they had here were utterly meaningless. Rather than pointlessly getting themselves killed, it was much better if they gave up quickly and conserved their strength. Thinking up to this point, Yuan Tiexin could not help but turn an incredulous gaze toward Xueqi. He simply could not bring himself to believe that Xueqi actually possessed this kind of strength. Xueqi was far stronger than he was during the auction arena. His growth was ridiculous. However, what Yuan Tiexin did not know was that, in reality, Xueqi wasn't in a good state at all. Although his current basic attributes were indeed superior to when he had participated in the auction arena, the overall improvement in his combat power was extremely limited. The only reason why he was able to exhibit such great power just now was his combining a taboo skill with a combat technique. As for deep-sea meditation, although the secret law allowed players to tap their latent potential, it took a massive toll on the user's stamina and concentration. Using the secret law in a place like the Bottomless Abyss only served to amplify its flaws. Similarly, combining Sword's transmigration and instant strike also placed an enormous demand on his stamina and concentration. When he used all of these things together, his stamina and concentration had drained away like there was no tomorrow. He had expended more than half of his total stamina and concentration to kill Zhang Baiya's group of 5. He wouldn't have been able to use the move a second time. Had the Heavenly Demon team and Horned Dragon team chosen to continue fighting, he would have had no choice but to run away. Meanwhile, on the Horned Dragon team's side, the members of the team currently wore ashen expressions on their faces, their hearts filled with frustrations. Commander, are we really leaving just like that? The guild leader instructed us to secure Stone Forest Town no matter the cost, and even if it isn't possible for us to secure it, we definitely can't let other powers have it. A level 67 ranger asked worriedly as he looked at Xueqi. Their guild leader's orders were absolute. If they returned completely unharmed now, they would definitely incur their guild leader's ire. What are you worried about? The struggle for Stone Forest Town has just begun. Even if we secured the town now, we'd still have to face the full-bore assault of numerous superpowers, Xueqi replied, chuckling. Against that kind of attack, even if our Sky Dragon House worked with Pride Empire, we might not necessarily be able to defend the town successfully. Do you think Black Flame and the Secret Pavilion can accomplish this on their own? The struggle for Stone Forest Town can be considered to have truly begun only when the experts of the various superpowers are all assembled. Our teams are here merely on reconnaissance. If the Secret Pavilion and Black Flame had worked with us, it would have definitely been possible to defend Stone Forest Town. Unfortunately, they chose to go down a dead end. Now that Stone Forest Town had been promoted to a basic city, the number of superpowers vying for it had grown to a point where even the Sky Dragon House found capturing it worrisome. This was also why Sky Dragon House had decided to partner with Pride Empire. Xueqi was simply immature if he thought he could defend Stone Forest Town with only the Secret Pavilion's help. Meanwhile, shortly after Shang Wuji's team left the Undead Forest, the opaque magic barrier around Stone Forest Town finally disappeared. A new city then appeared before everyone's eyes. Stone Forest Town was now officially Stone Forest City. Chapter 2153. Stone Forest City. The appearance of Stone Forest City immediately caused an uproar among the players present in the Undead Forest. Stone Forest Town had occupied only a small portion of the area covered by the magic barrier enveloping the center of the Undead Forest. However, Stone Forest City actually occupied nearly half of that area. Although the wall surrounding Stone Forest City was the default, 6-meter-tall wall, it was engraved with divine runes that prevented players from vaulting over it. Unless players breached the wall, they had no choice but to enter the city through the main gate. The defensive capabilities of Stone Forest City were undoubtedly much greater than when it was still a town. Moreover, after getting promoted to a city, the constructions inside Stone Forest had undergone significant transformations, especially Zero Wing's residence. Now, the guild hall sitting inside the residence had transformed into a 60-meter-tall building. It looked like a massive mountain and was visible even from several thousand yards away. After Zero Wing's guild hall, the structure that had undergone the most changes was the Zero Wing Auction House. The Zero Wing Auction House was an advanced construction. After Stone Forest Town became Stone Forest City, the auction house became a 12-story tall building that occupied a significant portion of the city's main street. The auction house was already larger than the auction houses of ordinary NPC cities. Moreover, aside from the auction house, the other constructions in the city also received significant improvements. Isn't Stone Forest City a little too luxurious? Purple Jade could not believe her eyes as she took in the towering buildings filling Stone Forest City. As a core member of the Secret Pavilion, she had seen quite a few guild cities. She had even personally conducted an investigation into several of them. However, she could say with absolute certainty that Stone Forest City was visibly better than every one of the guild cities she had visited. In fact, Stone Forest City looked much more splendorous than even the current Zero Wing City. It looked nothing like a recently promoted city at all. At this moment, Purple Jade wasn't the only person surprised by Stone Forest City's appearance. Even Easy Wind was stunned. The development of a guild city was a gradual process. All the information the Secret Pavilion had gathered supported this contention. However, Stone Forest City wasn't following the rules at all. Although I don't know what is going on here, the fact that Stone Forest City has already developed to such an extent means that we'll have a much greater hope of defending it. After Yuan Tiexin took a look at the various constructions filling the city, he promptly commanded his subordinates, "Notify the main headquarters immediately and have them transfer reinforcements through the temporary residence. We need to get Stone Forest City's defenses fully operational before the various superpowers arrive." In God's domain, the more prosperous a guild city was, the more NPC soldiers it could employ. Meanwhile, the constructions within a city played a huge role in determining its prosperity. With how prosperous Stone Forest City was, it should have a much greater advantage than other newly promoted guild cities when it came to recruiting NPC soldiers. There was a huge difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2 NPCs. Tier 2 NPCs, in particular, would have their combat standards affected by a city's prosperity. The more prosperous the guild city they worked for was, the better their combat standards would become. Take one of the few earliest guild cities that had appeared in God's domain, for example. At this point, the Tier 2 NPCs employed by these cities already had combat standards at the late stage of the Trial Tower's 5th floor. Including the advantage in basic attributes that NPCs had over players and their high levels, they could kill Tier 2 experts as if they were toying with ants. The current Stone Forest city might not be comparable to those old guild cities, but the Tier 2 NPC soldiers it hired should be capable of exhibiting combat standards at the 5th floor's early stage or middle stage. If Stone Forest City could employ a large number of such Tier 2 NPC soldiers, these soldiers would be a frightening force. This was also the reason why the various superpowers were so desperate to capture Stone Forest City now. A guild city was at its weakest just after completing its promotion. If they allowed Stone Forest City to reach its peak state, the cost of capturing the city would become several dozens of times higher. However, despite Yuan Tianxin and the others vocally expressing their curiosity about Stone Forest City's prosperous state, Xueqi did not give them an explanation. He simply chuckled and entered the city via the main gate. If he had promoted Stone Forest Town to a basic city through the normal method, it would indeed have ended up like any other newly promoted guild city. At most, the new Stone Forest City would occupy a larger area and have a taller wall. The constructions inside the city would remain mostly the same as before. However, Stone Forest Town was promoted using a Gold Town promotion order. Hence, after the town's promotion, the constructions inside it would be upgraded as well. This could be said to be the hidden benefit of upgrading a town using a promotion order. Meanwhile, after the crowd outside entered Stone Forest City, everyone received another surprise. Zero Wings members, in particular, revealed ecstatic expressions on their faces. At the moment, Stone Forest City's magic towers were clearly still inactive, yet the city's mana density was absurdly high. At least twice as high as Stone Forest Town's when all 3 of its magic towers were activated. It should be known that Stone Forest Town was already treated as a sacred training ground by players, as it was capable of improving players' 5 senses by 10%. Stone Forest City's current mana density, however, was capable of improving players' 5 senses by at least 15%. Although it was only a 5% increase, it could increase a player's training efficiency by at least 20%. After all, the greater a player's 5 senses were, the more useful their 5 senses would be in helping them improve their combat standards. Meanwhile, it was incredibly difficult for players to improve their 5 senses the further up they went. If ordinary players could train here, they might even become 5th floor experts within a month. Purple Jade's breathing quickened when she experienced the atmosphere inside Stone Forest City. Ordinary players might not know how much time and effort it took to become a Trial Tower 5th floor expert, but the Secret Pavilion did. The Secret Pavilion had specifically carried out a detailed analysis of the topic. Normally, a relatively talented player would take 2 or 3 months to reach the Trial Tower's 5th floor from an ordinary player's standard. Needless to say, the average ordinary player would take even longer to accomplish this feat. However, Purple Jade could say with absolute certainty that, so long as an ordinary player was willing to put in the effort, they could definitely reach the Trial Tower's 5th floor within a month in Stone Forest City. The reason why superpowers were able to be known as such was not only their humongous capital, but also their excellent training systems. They had specialized research teams tasked with studying and formulating methods of improving the strength of players and creating experts rapidly. The various superpowers expended an unimaginable amount of time and resources in order to improve the strength of their members quickly. However, most of their investments ended up in disappointment. Moreover, the training methods they did manage to create could be enjoyed by only a small number of players. Stone Forest City, on the other hand, was a natural training ground. Not only did it yield amazing training effects, but it could also accommodate an astronomical number of players. When Purple Jade imagined a guild filled entirely with expert players, her scalp tingled. Most likely, even current super guilds would shudder at this thought. However, during the time the Secret Pavilions and Zero Wings members were enthusing over the benefits Stone Forest City offered, a huge commotion suddenly erupted in the forest a short distance from the city. The noise was so loud that it echoed throughout the Undead forest. In the next moment, 3 gigantic flaming elephants walked out of the forest, each one up to 100 meters tall. Their flaming bodies also caused the space around them to blur. Flaming War Elephant, Elemental Creature, Mythic, Level 85. HP 450, 000, 000/450, 000, 000. Aside from these 3 flaming war elephants, several thousand players also emerged from the forest. Every one of these players was level 66 or above, and they all wore Starlink's guild emblem. Meanwhile, leading these players was none other than Bright Dawn, one of Starlink's vice guild leaders. Chapter 2154. You really shouldn't have come here. The 3 flaming war elephants loomed like mountains outside of Stone Forest City. Even the Undead Forest's monsters trembled at the sight. Both players and monsters could feel the war elephants' auras from several hundred yards away, recognizing that these creatures were even stronger than ordinary mythic monsters. How did they get here so quickly? Xueqi watched Starlink's army from Stone Forest City's walls in confusion. Although Starlink had mobilized a massive army, it should have needed several more hours to reach Stone Forest Town, according to the Secret Pavilion's information network. While several hours might not be enough time for the Secret Pavilion to set up an impenetrable defense, it should have been enough time to get Stone Forest City's defensive measures online. It also would have given the city time to recruit plenty of NPC soldiers. With those defensive measures in place, capturing Stone Forest City would have been considerably difficult. The city could have dragged the fight with Starlink out while it waited for more reinforcements. Unfortunately, not only had Starlink's forces arrived a lot sooner than expected, but the guild had also brought 3 mythic monsters with it. All 3 flaming war elephants were covered in glowing divine runes. They had obviously been enhanced by some kind of power, and it was clear they weren't ordinary summoned creatures. However, the flaming war elephants weren't the only problem right now. Hundreds of magical class experts escorted the summoned monsters. These experts had gathered and pooled their mana into several dozen dazzling energy stones. As these magical class experts filled the energy stones with their mana, magic arrays began to manifest around the stones, devouring the ambient mana from up to 1,000 yards away. To an ordinary guild expert, it would only seem as if Starlink were preparing to cast a powerful spell, perhaps a Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell. However, Xueqi was no ordinary expert, and he knew that wasn't a run-of-the-mill Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell. Rather, it was the Tier 4 curse-ranked ancient spell, Elemental Destruction. As far as he knew, Starlink regarded the spell like a family heirloom. The guild could use the energy stones to collect its players' mana, feeding the ancient spell. The energy stones could be used indefinitely. When cast, Elemental Destruction's power would depend on the number of energy stones used. The ancient spell required a minimum of 12 energy stones, and every additional 12 stones would qualitatively transform the spell. With 12 energy stones, Elemental Destruction would have the power of an ordinary Tier 4 spell. If the casters used 24 energy stones, the spell would display the power of a Tier 4 curse. Of course, the stronger the ancient spell became, the more it would require of its casters, and the cooldown would become longer. The last time Starlink had used the energy stones, it had destroyed a heavily fortified town under the Dark Force's control. The guild had only used 17 energy stones in that attack. Now, however, Starlink's magical class experts concentrated their mana into 29 energy stones. When they released the spell, Elemental Destruction would undoubtedly have the power of a Tier 4 curse. The ancient spell's destructive power would only be slightly weaker than a Tier 5 spell, more than enough to destroy a basic city's defensive magic array, which could only block ordinary Tier 4 attacks. At this stage of the game, a city's most impressive defensive measure was its magic barrier, which players were still helpless against. Not even a full day's assault from an army of 100,000 players could shatter a city's defensive magic array. They wouldn't even put a dent in its energy reserves. However, if the defensive magic array shattered, the city's remaining defenses would only be slightly stronger than a town's. Starlink's army had also used an epic-ranked defensive orb to protect its members. Although an epic defense orb's magic barrier was no match for a city's defensive magic array, it could withstand a few Tier 4 attacks. Unless Stone Forest City's defending forces could deplete the defense orb's mana, they wouldn't be able to harm Starlink's players. Meanwhile, as the home dragon team departed from the Undead Forest, it noticed the colossal magic array that hovered near the cavern ceiling. Despite standing several thousand yards away, the team's members could feel its domineering aura. Amazing! So, this is Starlink's rumored elemental destruction spell? Xueqi watched the mana fluctuations above grow stronger in shock. They must have originally prepared this to capture another undead fortress. It seems Starlink is really desperate to deal with Stone Forest City. Sky Dragon House had some understanding of the elemental destruction spell since it had obtained a few energy stones of its own. However, as the guild hadn't yet reached the minimum requirement to use the ancient spell. Although the energy stones could be used indefinitely, the stones' cooldown would be relative to the strength of the spell they powered. If one used 12 energy stones to cast elemental destruction, the stone's cooldown would be 10 days long. By Sheng Wuji's reasoning, using 29 energy stones to cast elemental destruction would result in a 20-day cooldown at the very least. As God's domain rapidly developed, a 20-day time span was incredibly precious. If Starlink had used its energy stones to capture another fortress in the ancient Undead country, rather than using them against Stone Forest City, it could have earned astronomical profits from the fortress during that 20-day wait. But since the superpower was in a hurry, Starlink had chosen to use the 29 energy stones to destroy Stone Forest City's defensive magic array. In reality, the guild could have relied on the 3 mythic-ranked flaming war elephants to shatter Stone Forest City's magic barrier in a short time. The only reason Starlink would use elemental destruction here, despite the exorbitant cost, was that it must want to end the battle as quickly as possible. "I suppose you didn't expect that we'd meet again so soon," guild leader Black Flame, Bright Dawn said, looking down on Xueqi, who stood on Stone Forest City's wall, with a smug grin from atop a flaming war elephant. "You gave me 2 choices earlier. Now I'll do the same for you. Either get lost or die. Choose." During their earlier encounter, he had been afraid of Xueqi, but now the tides had turned. With 3 level 85 mythic monsters and a tier 4 curse-ranked elemental destruction at his command, he could even defeat a group of monster-level experts, much less Xueqi. "Boss, why are you wasting your words on him? Let's just force him to hand over his treasures and an extra piece of epic equipment. Otherwise, he'll have no hope of leaving this place alive." "That's right. How can we let him off the hook so easily after such a long trip?" Bright Dawn's confidants expressed their opinions on the matter. They all wanted to tear Xueqi to shreds to satisfy their resentment for the swordsman. Of course, the conditions they'd stated were a bluff. They were merely toying with Xueqi. Even if he handed over his treasure and epic equipment, they couldn't afford to let him escape with his life. Their guild leader, Lu Xinglua, had personally ordered this man's death. Yuan Tiexin and the others were livid when they heard the clamor Starlink's experts were making. Although they wanted to teach these fools a lesson, facing off against 3 mythic monsters and several thousand experts with so few on their side wouldn't be wise. They could only buy as much time as possible or be forced to watch as Starlink destroyed Stone Forest City. "You barely survived our last meeting. You really shouldn't have come," Xueqi calmly replied, giving Bright Dawn a condescending look. "Black Flame," Bright Dawn bellowed, his eyes glowing with a chilling light. Immediately, he commanded, "Ready elemental destruction and destroy Stone Forest City. I want him to, Before Bright Dawn could finish his statement, however, Xueqi revealed the Tier 4 magic scroll he had obtained from the Lord of Fire, empowering it with an elemental source. He activated the scroll without hesitation. Suddenly, a humongous magic array appeared above Starlink's force, gathering mana far faster than Starlink's elemental destruction. The mana fluctuations even destabilized space around it. Before anyone could react, a streak of blue-purple lightning descended. Boom! The lightning bolt easily pierced through the magic barrier protecting Starlink's army and struck the players below. Every player within the lightning bolt's range vaporized instantly. The attack also tore space as it passed. After the lightning bolt dissipated, silence dominated the battlefield. The 3 flaming war elephants, who had been in range of the attack, were heavily injured, and despite standing apart from each other, the lightning bolt had eliminated more than 90% of Starlink's army. For a moment, time seemed to freeze in the Undead forest. Both the home Dragon team members, who watched from a safe distance, and the players within Stone Forest City, were dazed. Chapter 2155. Suppressing Starlink. As the dust settled, it revealed a crater extending over 400 yards across. Thousands of weapons and equipment filled the newly formed pit. Moreover, even the most inferior item in the crater was level 65 fine gold rank. Even superpowers would be tempted into action by so many top-tier items in one place. However, not a single watching player harbored any thoughts of greed as they gazed upon the battlefield. Rather, horror dominated their hearts. A single attack had slain several thousand experts in the blink of an eye. Moreover, they weren't ordinary experts. Most of those players were refinement realm experts, peak experts in first-rate guilds, yet they had died without offering any resistance. How is this possible? Yuan Tiexin, who observed the battlefield from Stone Forest City's walls, could hardly believe this outcome. Starlink had used an epic rank defense orb, an item that was even more valuable than Zero Wing's movement-type defensive magic array, and capable of enduring Tier 4 attacks. It could even withstand an assault from magic towers. This defense orb was the reason that Bright Dawn had dared to move within 1,000 yards of Stone Forest City. The defense orb's only flaw was its troublesome refueling process. Players would have to wait a long time before they could sacrifice more magic crystals to restore the defense orb's energy after a use. Even so, Starlink had relied on this defense orb to crush Unyielding Soul's army and foil the guild's plans to capture one of the ancient undead country's fortresses. And yet, Xueqi had shattered the defense orb's magic barrier in an instant. The barrier hadn't even given the lightning bolt pause. Once the barrier had shattered, the lightning bolt had continued, killing thousands of Starlink's experts and injuring 3 mythic monsters. Just how much strength has Black Flame hidden? Shang Wuji, who watched from a safe position, gaped at the swordsman's figure though a magic mirror. Xueqi's success in slaying the Heavenly Demon team had already been frightening, but it paled in comparison to the power he had just revealed. Had Xueqi used this move earlier, neither the Horned Dragon team nor the Heavenly Demon team would have walked out of the Undead Forest alive. He would have turned them all to ash. Shortly after Xueqi's attack, Bright Dawn, who had been a pile of ash, began to reform in his previous position on the back of the flaming war elephant. When he saw the destruction before him, shock and rage flashed in his eyes. Black Flame, I want you dead! Bright Dawn screamed, his eyes becoming bloodshot. As one of Starlink's vice guild leaders, the guild had given him an ancient resurrection scroll, which would grant him a second life without the usual death penalties. Unfortunately, the ancient resurrection scroll was incomparably precious, so obtaining another was practically impossible. However, the scroll wasn't the most expensive loss. The deaths of several thousand experts were far more important. These experts weren't some random nobodies in the guild. The guild had handpicked and trained them all, and even the weakest of them was capable of reaching the trial tower's 7th floor. Furthermore, Lu Xinglua had granted Bright Dawn the right to mobilize a large number of the guild's Refinement Realm experts to ensure Stone Forest City's capture. Refinement Realm experts. All of these players were the guild's lifeblood. Yet, Xueqi had killed over 200 of these experts with just one move. Since joining God's domain, Starlink had never suffered such a severe loss, yet not only had the guild lost so many experts, but it had also happened under Bright Dawn's supervision. Bright Dawn immediately commanded the 3 flaming war elephants to attack. With a furious roar, the 3 mythic monsters charged towards Stone Forest City's defensive magic array. Starlink's surviving members also responded, bombarding the city with every trump card they had. For a time, the Undead Forest became a world of spells and explosions. Although the 3 flaming war elephants were heavily injured, they were still mythic monsters. Every one of their attacks devoured a significant portion of the magic barrier's energy reserves. Meanwhile, Starlink's members, who could exhibit Tier 3 strength, attacked the city with everything they had. With nearly 1,000 players attacking as one, they caused quite a bit of damage to the defensive magic array as well. After one round of attacks, Stone Forest City's defensive magic array began to shudder violently. Seeing this, the players in the city began to retaliate. They attacked with either their own spells and arrows or with miniature ballistas and defense turrets. One of the city's magic towers also activated, bombarding Starlink's members. However, the guild survivors were all experts, and aside from the magic tower's attacks, they dodged most of the incoming strikes with relative ease. Furthermore, they took advantage of the longer intervals between each magic tower attack, and only one magic tower was active at the moment. Unfortunately, the city's NPC soldiers could only attack from a distance, using spells and other long-range attacks. Not many of these NPCs were able to exhibit their full strength due to the 3 mythic monsters outside. Sending these NPC soldiers outside of the city would be no different than sacrificing their lives for nothing. Only Xueqi, the secret pavilion's peak experts, and the pavilion's dozen or so Tier 3 summon creatures were strong enough to stand a chance on the other side of Stone Forest City's walls. Although this wasn't a large-scale battle, ordinary experts and Refinement Realm experts would be nothing more than cannon fodder on the front lines. Die! Die! Black Flame! Die! Bright Dawn downed a Berserk potion and activated his Berserk skill without hesitation. He and his surviving subordinates then charged at Xueqi. The three old monsters that had followed Bright Dawn to the Undead forest joined the charge, as well, and Xueqi recognized them all. They were Sword Demon, Wind Demon, and Heart Demon of the four Shadow Demons. When these three domain realm experts worked together, they could even defeat the Heavenly Demon team and Horned Dragon team. After consuming Berserk potions and activating their Berserk skills, their basic attributes rose to the Tier 4 standard. For a short time, these old monsters could even solo mythic monsters of the same level. Against Bright Dawn and three of the four Shadow Demons' coordinated assault, Xueqi, who had activated Heavenly Dragon's power, was at a disadvantage, continuously losing HP. Of course, this fight wasn't a walk in the park for Xueqi's opponents, either. After activating Heavenly Dragon's power, Xueqi's strength rose to a tyrannical level. With his ability to counter his opponent's attacks, he steadily chipped away at his enemies' HPs. Furthermore, Heavenly Dragon's power gave Xueqi superb defense, and although he lost HP, he didn't lose it quickly. As time passed, the battle grew more intense. Most players had switched to magic scrolls and support tools, rather than relying on their own skills and spells to amplify their damage output. When Heart Demon saw Xueqi's HP fall to 50%, he retrieved a crystal and used it in tandem with a spell. Suddenly, his Tier 2 spell had Tier 3 power. Including basic attributes that rivaled mythic monsters, not even such creatures could stop his enhanced attack. Suddenly, over 30 magic spears flew at Xueqi from different directions, each with Tier 4 power. Every one of these spears was under Heart Demon's control, and they agilely flew toward their target like fish through water. Not one to be outdone, Sword Demon activated his most powerful skill, Slash of Light, and his great sword lit with a brilliant glow. He swung the weapon toward Xueqi's back, sealing off the other swordsman's path of retreat. "Come!" Xueqi shouted. Even he felt the threat of death, and since he had already used up his life-saving skills, he had no choice but to activate Blade Liberation. As his basic attributes skyrocketed, he countered the approaching magic spears and glowing great sword with a swing of his blade. Lightning Slash! A blue glow enveloped Xueqi's surroundings as a black line followed. Immediately, all 30-plus magic spears and the Slash of Light shattered, yet the blue light didn't stop after nullifying the attacks, rapidly reaching for Sword Demon and Heart Demon. In the end, neither old monster evaded the incoming attack, dying instantly as their HPs hit 0. Every expert on the battlefield was stunned. With his strength alone, Xueqi had fought 4 of Starlink's great experts. 3 of these 4 players were even monster-level experts, existences that could even give the various superpowers massive headaches. In the end, however, not only had Xueqi proven to be their match, but he had also instant-killed 2 of them. Chapter 2156. Silence. Bright Dawn and Wind Demon, who had stood a little behind Sword Demon and Heart Demon, almost instinctively slid to a halt and jumped back the moment they saw their 2 allies fall, not daring to step any closer to Xueqi. After increasing the distance between them and this terrifying swordsman, they stared at Xueqi, who currently radiated the aura of a ferocious wild beast. Could he actually be an old monster in disguise? Wind Demon stared at the man in question in shock. Sword Demon and Heart Demon had undoubted wielded basic attributes at the Tier 4 standard, yet even after combining their attributes and combat standards, they hadn't even survived one of Xueqi's attacks. Wind Demon could no longer fathom Xueqi's strength. However, what truly shocked Wind Demon was the swordsman's temperament. Xueqi behaved nothing like a man of his age. Previously, if he and Bright Dawn hadn't stood behind their comrades, they wouldn't have had the time to react to Xueqi's transformed aura and activate their life-saving skills. Xueqi would have killed them all with that last attack. Xueqi had directed Sword Demon and Heart Demon right where he wanted them, in the midst of activating a skill when Xueqi had attacked. When players activated a skill in God's domain, they had to wait for a brief moment before they could activate another. The stronger the skill was, the longer they'd have to wait. Xueqi had clearly taken into account this interval and waited for the perfect moment to strike. He fought like an assassin, waiting for the perfect moment to land a fatal blow before revealing himself. Although Sword Demon and Heart Demon had sensed the change to Xueqi's aura, they had been in the midst of activating a skill and unable to react to their enemy's perfect timing. Strength. Technique. Temperament. Xueqi was flawless in all three aspects. Normally, younger fighters like Xueqi were eager to reveal all of their strength, wanting the world's admiration. However, that was not the case with Xueqi. Like a veteran fighter with decades of experience, Xueqi didn't reveal his cards until the very last moment. Moreover, he played every card perfectly. Wind Demon wasn't the only one with such thoughts. Even Yuan Tixin, who watched from afar, was astonished. Since Yuan Tixin had met Xueqi, the swordsman had revealed one trump card after another. Even with the experience he had accumulated over his many years, Yuan Tixin couldn't predict Xueqi's limits. On the contrary, the more he watched the young man, the cloudier Xueqi became. He wasn't anything like youngsters, such as Purple Jade, who fought with all of their cards on the table. Meanwhile, now that Sword Demon and Heart Demon, the strongest melee and ranged fighter among the three shadow demons present, were dead, Wind Demon and Bright Dawn had no way of keeping Xueqi in check. If they continued this battle, it would only be a matter of time before they, too, met their demise. Once Wind Demon and Bright Dawn died, Starlink would lose the last experts that could command its forces in the Undead Forest. The Secret Pavilion and Zero Wing would then have control of the battlefield. Black Flame. I admit that you're good. I truly didn't expect you to be so strong, Bright Dawn said, sneering at Xueqi, who prepared to launch another attack. However, you still can't save Stone Forest City from destruction today. Dawn, you couldn't possibly be thinking. When Wind Demon heard Bright Dawn's threat, a look of horror overtook his features. Before setting off on this expedition, they had prepared for Stone Forest City's capture and destruction. Only, destroying the city was supposed to be a last resort. Not only would they lose Stone Forest City, but they'd also have to pay a high price to destroy the city. They were supposed to avoid this option unless they had no other choice. The moment they resorted to this method, no one would leave the Undead Forest alive. Before Wind Demon could do anything to stop Bright Dawn, the Undead Knight pulled a pitch-black seed from his bag. Although the seed was only the size of his thumb, it released a blood-curdling aura that was even stronger than that of the mythic-ranked Flaming War Elephants. Even ordinary Tier 2 players would fall to their knees from the pressure, unable to move, if they stood within 10 yards of this black seed. Moreover, the seed released a dense cloud of dark energy. Even the bottomless abyss's dark energy paled in comparison. Yuan Tixin and the other peak experts had a bad feeling the moment Bright Dawn revealed this black seed. At their standards they could push their 5 senses to their very limits, and their 6th sense was just as sharp. This was why experts like them could avoid dangerous situations when exploring God's domain. Meanwhile, their instincts screamed a warning when they saw the black seed, insisting that they flee. As Yuan Tixin and his comrades thought of stopping the Undead Knight, who was clearly mad, Bright Dawn threw the seed to the ground. As soon as the black seed hit the soil, it began to devour dark energy from its surroundings, quickly growing into a towering tree that bore a single gigantic black fruit. As the fruit fell to the ground, it cracked open and released an aura of death and destruction. Even the 3 Flaming War Elephants, which had been attacking Stone Forest City's magic barrier, froze in fear. Players over 1,000 yards away felt their bodies become heavy as the intense pressure washed over them. Even space seemed to freeze. A goat-headed demon with a snake tail then emerged from the split fruit. It bore 3 horns that were enveloped in emerald fire and wore a full set of pitch-black armor. To be precise, this armored creature wasn't just any demon, but a great demon, far more powerful than its ordinary counterparts. Mulfins, Marquis, demonic creature, great demon. Level 87. HP 640, 000, 000/640, 000. Black Flame. Aren't you such a skilled fighter? Now you can have your fill of combat. Bright Dawn laughed maniacally as he watched the great demon spawn from the Dark Seed. The Dark Seed was the final trump card Starlink had prepared to protect its fortress in the ancient undead country. But rather than protect it, this demon would ensure mutual destruction. This Dark Seed would summon a great demon, but not just an ordinary great demon. It summoned a great demon noble, which was even more terrifying. However, players couldn't control this great demon. Once it had been summoned, this great demon would slaughter every player in sight. It would also call forth a demon gate, calling forth a demonic army to the continent of God's domain. Hence, the Dark Seed was akin to a seed of destruction. Bright Dawn hadn't originally planned to use the Dark Seed, but Xuefeng had foiled his plans yet again, and he had suffered a painful defeat in Starlink's name. After such a tremendous loss, he couldn't care less about what would happen if he used the Dark Seed. No matter what, Bright Dawn wanted Xuefeng to watch the city he had built meet its destruction and throw Zero Wing into hell. When Yuan Tiexian saw the great demon Malphans, his expression became indescribably grim. Unlike ordinary monsters, demonic creatures were segregated by their bloodlines. Demons' ranks depended on the purity of their bloodlines, and the purer a demon's bloodline was, the higher its noble rank would be. Similarly, purer bloodlines meant stronger demons. Based on the information the secret pavilion had gathered, a Viscount demon could rival an archaic species of the same level. However, Malphans was a Marquis, 2 ranks higher than a Viscount. Yuan Tiexian had no idea how powerful this great demon truly was. A Dark Seed. Xuefeng could not help but shake his head at Bright Dawn, who had clearly gone mad. Vice Guild Leader Bright Dawn, I told you that you shouldn't have come here. Since you refused to listen to my advice, you'll stay here indefinitely. Xuefeng then pulled out the Bible of Darkness and activated Divine Providence before shifting his gaze toward Malphans, who hovered in the air. He then began to chant an incantation. Demon Ruler. Suddenly, pitch-black chains appeared out of thin air and bound the great demon. Panicking, Malphans struggled against the chains, but Xuefeng wielded the official copy of the Bible of Darkness. Not even a great demon could resist its power. After struggling for a moment, Malphans's eyes dulled as he lost his will. The great demon Marquis then flapped his leathery wings twice and descended toward Xuefeng, positioning himself behind the swordsman out of respect. When they saw this, everyone on the battlefield fell silent. Chapter 2157. Great Demon's Might. Impossible. When Bright Dawn saw Malphans respectfully standing behind Xuefeng like a servant, shock and confusion quickly replaced his crazed expression. The great demon Malphans was a disaster one summoned through the Dark Seed. In God's domain, anything that was considered a disaster was capable of devastating an entire country. As a Tier 4 Marquis, Malphans was practically invincible among opponents of the same tier. Some Tier 4 NPCs would even be forced to flee from the great demon. Yet, such a terrifying existence accepted a player's control, just like that. Bright Dawn wasn't alone. Everyone watching was in utter shock over the great demon's subservience. In 1 second, everyone had given in to their hopelessness and despair over the Undead Knight's final move, but in the next, Xuefeng had shown them how laughable that move truly was. What did he do? As Wind Demon stared at Malphans, obediently standing behind Xuefeng, he felt his entire world flip upside down. Not even Bright Dawn, the Dark Seed's user, cloud control Malphans once the great demon had been summoned, yet Xuefeng accomplished the feat so easily. No matter how Wind Demon looked at the situation, it definitely felt like a dream. However, Malphans proved to the crowd that this was no dream. It was, in fact, a despair-inducing nightmare. Under Xuefeng's command, Malphans charged at the 3 flaming war elephants. The several hundred yards between the demonic Marquis and its prey were practically non-existent to Malphans, and he appeared before one of the mythic monsters in the blink of an eye. Roar! The flaming war elephant responded to the great demon with an enraged roar, instinctively raising a front foot to flatten the creature. Although the flaming war elephant was heavily injured, its basic attributes were far higher than ordinary mythic monsters as a Tier 4 summoned creature. Hence, even though its injuries limited its combat power, its stomp carried Tier 4 strength. The 4-meter-tall Malphans looked like an ant in comparison to the war elephant's gigantic foot, but despite the size difference, Malphans continued to hover in place, simply raising a hand to greet the descending foot. Boom! The explosion echoed throughout the undead forest, its resulting shockwave throwing the surrounding Tier 2 players off their feet. None of these players would forget what followed for the rest of their lives. Malphans had actually stopped the flaming war elephant's mountain-sized foot. What was even more unbelievable was the fact that the great demon had accomplished the feat by using a single finger. No matter how much the flaming war elephant pushed, it was no stronger than a powerless infant. With a light push, Malphans forced the mythic monster to stumble several steps backward. The difference between their strengths was obvious. Malphans and the flaming war elephant were on entirely different levels. Crap! How powerful is that demon? Yuan Tixin could not help but curse as he watched the scene play out. As an organization that mainly focused on information gathering, the secret pavilion had gathered far more data on God's domain than any other power. Naturally, the pavilion hadn't failed to study demonic creatures. According to the secret pavilion's research, demons weren't so powerful simply due to their extraordinary basic attributes, but because of the many skills and spells in their possession and their particularly high combat standards. Although Yuan Tixin knew that a marquee-ranked great demon was extremely powerful, he hadn't thought that Malfin's would be this powerful. That one exchange had made it clear that Malfin's strength was leaps and bounds above the flaming war elephants. Even without skills, spells, or combat techniques, the great demon could easily slay the Tier 4 summoned creature. However, Yuan Tixin didn't know that Xueqi controlled the demonic marquee with the Bible of Darkness. Due to demon ruler's effects, Malfin's current basic attributes were far higher than when he had initially been summoned. Originally, Malfin's at most was slightly stronger than the flaming war elephants. The difference between the monsters only grew to such extremes after including the demon ruler's effects. However, Malfin's had also lost his free will and intellect as a result, which significantly reduced his combat standards. Overall, Malfin's current combat power was slightly weaker than when the great demon had his free will. Of course, that was only true when Malfin's against players. Against monsters, Malfin's current strength was more than enough. While the watching players were stunned by the great demon's overwhelming performance, Bright Dawn fell to his despair. The Dark Seed had been Starlink's final trump card, reserved to defend its fortress in the ancient Undead country. But not only had that trump card failed Bright Dawn, but Xueqi had also claimed its power for himself. How was he supposed to continue this fight? Although Bright Dawn still had 3 flaming war elephants on his side, they were utterly meaningless before Malfin's. With a simple attack, Malfin's had inflicted over -5 million damage to the flaming war elephant. The great demon could likely finish off the summoned creature's 450 million HP in less than 2 minutes. In total, Malfin's could end all 3 war elephants in less than 6 minutes. In its current state, Starlink's army had no hope of destroying Stone Forest City's defensive magic array in such little time. The moment the 3 flaming war elephants died, Starlink's army would be powerless against the city's magic barrier, becoming living targets for the city's players. Retreat! The word echoed in Bright Dawn's mind. The undead knight immediately gave the command before he turned and fled. He had no desire to stay and continue this battle. However, Xueqi's reaction was faster than Bright Dawn had expected. The swordsman appeared in the undead knight's path the moment Bright Dawn turned away from the fight. As Xueqi slowly walked up to Bright Dawn, he smiled and asked, "Now you want to leave?" "Just you wait, Black Flame. You may have stopped Starlink's assault, but you won't stop the various superpowers once they arrive. Even if you can control that demon, its time is limited here. Once the summoning's duration ends, you'll have to stand by and watch as your city is destroyed." Bright Dawn snarled with a mad glint in his eyes. "Oh, you don't have to worry about that," Xueqi said as he executed Sword's transmigration. With his twofold berserk still active, Bright Dawn was no match for Xueqi's speed and strength. Before Starlink's commander could respond, his body split in 2, and he lost the last remnants of his HP. The moment Bright Dawn died, Starlink's army lost its commander. Stone Forest Town's defenders then had the advantage. The great demon Malfin slew all 3 flaming war elephants in less than 5 minutes and proceeded to hunt down Starlink's fleeing members, slaughtering them like a flock of helpless sheep. The watching players only snapped out of their daze after the battle had ended. Shang Wuji, in particular, was shocked beyond words as he watched from a distance. Starlink had dispatched several thousand experts and 3 mythic monsters to capture Stone Forest City. Even a superpower would have to take such a force seriously. However, this army had been obliterated, and it hadn't even broken Stone Forest City's defensive magic array before its defeat. Meanwhile, news of the battle's unexpected results spread to the various superpowers like wildfire. For a time, the outcome shook God's domain to its core. Chapter 2158. Shocking Battle. Starmoon Kingdom, White River City. Tall buildings and large crowds filled the city's business district. The scene was even more prosperous than most kingdoms' capital cities in God's domain. Currently, a man and a woman wearing Crimson Emperor's Guild emblem ventured down the street. The man had a handsome, majestic appearance, while the woman looked beautiful and intelligent. Both players had already reached level 68, and if they hadn't concealed their levels with their black cloaks, they would have been the center of attention wherever they went. Zero Wing is truly amazing. It has actually nurtured White River City into such a powerhouse. Even if Zero Wing loses Stone Forest City, it'll still have a good chance of becoming an overlord in God's domain. Illusory Words commented as she observed the players wandering about the business district. After Zero Wing had taken control of White River City's auction house, White River City's popularity and growth had skyrocketed. The city practically changed with each passing day as players surged through its gates. While most of the NPC cities with player-controlled auction houses had significantly improved as well, White River City's growth was far more pronounced. White River City's impressive development wasn't due to an influx of new players, but the arrival of well-known adventurer teams, merchant players, and high-ranked lifestyle players. Since new players hadn't spent much time in God's domain yet, they lacked both individual and financial strength. They wouldn't be able to contribute much to a city or its ruling guild. However, the same wasn't true of adventurer team members, merchant players, and lifestyle players with relatively high standards. Expert players could become usable combat power the moment they joined a guild, and merchant players could increase a city's economic prowess. As for lifestyle players, they would bring with them merchandise that supported the city's combat players, which in turn would increase the development speed of the city's players. New players could neither compete with the benefits veteran players brought to a city, nor could they increase the ruling guild's profits. Crimson Emperor controlled 2 NPC auction houses, both of which were located in Kingdom's capital cities. The guild had invested plenty of resources in these 2 cities' development since the auction arena had ended, but both paled in comparison to White River City. Now, only an empire's imperial capital could surpass White River City's development speed. Become one of God's domain's overlords? The majestic man, Crimson Gate, lightly snorted at Illusory Words' comment. Illusory, you think too highly of Zero Wing. Do you think it is that easy to become an overlord? Not only would one need sufficient experts and legacies, but they'd also require enough financial strength. Even if Zero Wing holds Stone Forest City, its future of becoming an overlord isn't guaranteed. Besides, there's no way Zero Wing will keep Stone Forest City. Although, the guild still has some hope. As long as Zero Wing acknowledges its place and behaves accordingly, it may retain some of the city's profits. Acknowledges its place, huh? Illusory Words did not try to rebuke Crimson Gate's words. As she glanced at the various other superpowers members on the street, she shook her head and sighed. I'm afraid that even if Zero Wing concedes Stone Forest City, it'll only retain negligible profits. Too much was at stake in Stone Forest City, and many superpowers were keeping a close eye on the city. Even the superpowers that had planned to ally with Zero Wing had changed their minds, now intending to force the guild to relinquish the city's shares. This was even true of Crimson Emperor. To claim a share of the profits, the various superpowers had dispatched representatives to negotiate with Zero Wing. According to Crimson Emperor's investigation, more than 10 superpowers had already gathered in White River City. This situation had already become a living nightmare. Even the most valuable empires in God's domain had no more than 7 or 8 competing superpowers, but now, more than 10 superpowers had gathered to fight for Stone Forest City. They were still waiting for the various superpowers' armies to gather around Stone Forest City, which was the only reason they hadn't entered Zero Wing's residence yet. Zero Wing's opinion on the outcome doesn't matter. It no longer has any say. Not even the secret pavilion can change this. Sneering, Crimson Gate continued, if Zero Wing refuses our offer, it will only find destruction in its future. Not even Stone Forest City will survive. As one of the few transcendental powers in the virtual gaming world, the secret pavilion was quite powerful. Not even ordinary super guilds dared to provoke it. However, after all was said and done, the secret pavilion didn't have a monopoly over the virtual gaming world, which was especially true after God's domain's launch. Not even a ferocious tiger could defeat a pack of wolves. The secret pavilion definitely understood this. When the time arrived, the pavilion would abandon Zero Wing. While Crimson Gate and Illusory Words conversed and patiently waited for the various superpowers' armies to surround Stone Forest City, a commotion broke out among the superpowers' representatives, who loitered around the business district. What's wrong with them? Crimson Gate watched the representatives with an odd look as their expressions changed drastically. Are the armies already in place? No. Illusory Words abruptly exclaimed as she finished reading a message she had just received. With a complex look, she turned to Crimson Gate and said, I've just received news that Zero Wing has fended off Starlink's assault on Stone Forest City. Starlink's been defeated? Crimson Gate asked, surprised by the news. Starlink was one of the up-and-coming superpowers in the virtual gaming world. Aside from its slightly undeveloped legacy, the guild was even stronger than Crimson Emperor overall. It seems Zero Wing is stronger than expected to stop Starlink's all-out attack. It's no wonder why those people seem shocked. No, that's not all. According to our insider information, the army Starlink sent to Stone Forest City has been annihilated. Illusory Words informed her companion with a grim expression. Annihilated? Impossible. Crimson Gate said incredulously. Someone must have made a mistake with the report. Let me have a look. As someone who had been fighting Starlink for quite some time, he knew how powerful the guild was. If Starlink went all out, it would even defeat Crimson Emperor. If Zero Wing had merely stopped Starlink's assault, Crimson Gate would, at most, be surprised. That victory would still be somewhat believable. After all, not only did Zero Wing have the defender's advantage, but it also had the secret pavilion's support. However, claiming that Zero Wing had annihilated Starlink's army was simply nonsense. Even though Starlink had sent a hastily organized army, 2,000 or 3,000 of the guild's experts should be quite formidable. If Crimson Emperor had been in Zero Wing's place, it would have been fortunate to slay half of Starlink's forces if it used everything in its arsenal. Starlink hadn't sent ordinary experts after all, and if those players focused on their retreat, chasing them down and killing them would be extremely difficult. Hence, Starlink's annihilation must be a joke. However, the man's arrogant expression froze as he finished reading the message his companion had received. One man had scared the Heavenly Demon Team and Horned Dragon Team into a retreat. One man had suppressed 4 great experts from Starlink. One man had controlled a great demon marquis, slaughtering Starlink's army. Everyone that had received the news, including Crimson Gate and the various superpowers upper echelons, was speechless. Could Xueqi even be considered human at this point? Chapter 2159, Death's Reward. The various superpowers representatives in White River City fell silent for a time, their expressions twisting, after receiving news of Xueqi's battle. Black Flame is truly a monster. He's not even here, and he's still capable of influencing the situation in White River City, Illusory Words said, smiling bitterly as she looked around. She was surprised to learn that one person was so powerful. I admit that he is amazing, but the various superpowers are far more afraid of that great demon marquis than they are of Black Flame himself, Crimson Gate said after recollecting himself. As he watched Xueqi's figure in the battle video, he sneered and continued, but at the end of the day, he's only using some special tool to control that great demon. He can't control it forever. Once Black Flame loses control of that monster, how does he plan to deal with the various superpowers? In God's domain, the stronger a monster was, the harder it would be to control. A player's control of such a being wouldn't last long, either. Controlling a great demon marquis for several hours would be heaven-defying. However, how much could Zero Wing and the secret pavilion possibly fortify Stone Forest City in just several hours? Developing guild towns and cities was a gradual process. Not even a dozen hours would be long enough to alter Stone Forest Town's defenses significantly. Normally, a guild city would need several days before it could become fully operational, and the various superpowers' armies didn't need that long to surround the city. Xueqi might be able to contend with one superpower by himself, but what about the rest of them? In Crimson Gate's opinion, all Zero Wing had achieved by defeating Starlink was gaining some more time. This wouldn't change the end result. Indeed. Although Zero Wing appears to have the initiative, that's only an illusion. Illusory Words nodded in agreement. However, I'm sure that the guild understands that. Zero Wing needs a partner more than anything else right now. If we try to negotiate with Zero Wing now, we should be able to secure a fortune. I'm afraid you are mistaken, Illusory. Zero Wing is too arrogant to negotiate with us right now. It has, after all, just defeated Starlink. However, as time passes and the Great Demon's duration reaches a close, I'm sure Zero Wing will grow nervous and desperate for partners to reinforce Stone Forest City's defenses, Crimson Gate said, chuckling. We just need to wait for the opportune moment to approach the guild. Once the guild is desperate enough, it'll accept any of our demands. Even though Shifeng's performance had been impressive, he was still a pest before so many superpowers. He had only bought his guild a little more time. Crimson Gate wasn't the only one to bide his time. The other superpowers representatives waited quietly, as well. It seemed as if they were all waiting to watch Zero Wing make a fool of itself. Meanwhile, Yuan Tianxin, who had just received a report regarding the various superpowers' actions, could not help but frown. Sure enough, these superpowers aren't so easily fooled. None of them are taking action. Gritting his teeth, Yuan Tianxin turned to look at Shifeng and hurriedly asked, Guild Leader Black Flame, do you really plan to wait? The battle with Starlink had ended more than an hour ago, but none of the various superpowers moving towards Stone Forest City had attempted to make contact with Zero Wing or the secret pavilion. Although Yuan Tianxin was confident of the secret pavilion's strength, he knew that a tiger had no hope of beating a wolf pack. If they did not secure enough help to defend Stone Forest City, they'd likely struggle to get past the next hurdle. Yet, despite Zero Wing's growing disadvantage, Zero Wing hadn't attempted to recruit allies over the last 2 hours. Yuan Tianxin had no idea what the swordsman was thinking. Once the great demon Malphins disappeared, they'd be fish on the chopping block. Of course not, Shifeng answered. That is reassuring. The secret pavilion has spies in the various superpowers. It shouldn't be difficult to discover their intentions. When do you plan to make your move, Guild Leader Black Flame? Yuan Tianxin asked, inwardly breathing a sigh of relief. He had worried that Shifeng would hold on to Stone Forest City shares, refusing to sell them for any price. If that were the case, both Zero Wing and the secret pavilion would face the worst-case scenario. However, if Shifeng could rope in 2 or 3 more allies, their situation would be easier to handle. At the very least, they'd be able to defend Stone Forest City. The only problem would be assigning shares. But Shifeng shifted his gaze to the great demon beside him and calmly stated, we should be able to move once he dies. When Shifeng finished his statement, the atmosphere around them froze. Yuan Tianxin couldn't help but glare at the man. This isn't the time for joking, Black Flame. Yuan Tianxin was nearly speechless as he glowered at Shifeng. The great demon Malphins was the only reason the various superpowers were afraid of Zero Wing right now. Once Malphins died, Zero Wing would lose its advantage from defeating Starlink. The guild might even be in a worse position for wasting the various superpowers' time. Yet, this swordsman had just told him that they were just waiting to watch Malphins die? Had anyone else made such a statement, Yuan Tianxin would likely have flown into a rage and beat them to a pulp. I'm not joking, Shifeng said, chuckling at the bubbling elder before him. The dark seed was on par with a natural disaster in God's domain. It was a powerful enough tool to ruin kingdoms and devastate empires. Any power in the past that had obtained a dark seed had reserved the item as a final trump card, ensuring that it would defeat its enemies, even if it had to endure mutual destruction. However, there was one thing that current players did not know about the dark seed. Although the dark seed was a disastrous item, it was also a golden opportunity. Once the demon summoned with the dark seed died, it was guaranteed to drop the Dark Tower design. Constructing the Dark Tower was quite simple. In fact, it was more of a summoning than blueprints. Although the Dark Tower was not a peak construction, it was as close as possible. Not even the 4 towers of elements were as powerful. The moment Shifeng fell silent, Malphins cried out in anguish as silver fire began to devour its body, leaving nothing but ashes. Malphins' death stunned the Zero Wing and secret pavilion members watching. They all stared, as horrified as if they had just received the death penalty. Once Malphins was gone, a golden-rimmed tome appeared on the ground in its place. The dark energy the tome exuded was no weaker than the dark seeds. The closest players felt incredibly uncomfortable as the dark energy touched them. The words Dark Tower Design graced the tome's cover. Chapter 2160. Dark Tower. What a powerful book. Its aura is strong enough to make my heart skip a beat. Purple Jade was astounded as she stared at the Dark Tower design that had appeared in the great demon Malphins' place. Normally, God's Domain's items didn't possess an aura, but those that did were extraordinary. As one of the secret pavilion's core members, Purple Jade had seen many items that exuded auras. That being said, she could count the number of items she had encountered that could make her heart skip a beat on one hand. Moreover, those items were generally tools left behind by some ancient god. Until today, she had never seen a book with such a powerful aura. I'm afraid this will push the various superpowers into making their move. Xueqi commented with a grim expression after watching Malphins disappear. Unlike Purple Jade, he was in no mood to pay attention to the tome the Great Demon had dropped. The Great Demon Malphins had been Stone Forest City's protection charm, deterring any power from attacking. None of Zero Wing's enemies were confident of defeating a monster that was practically invincible among Tier 4 beings. It didn't even matter if the various superpowers mobilized every member. However, without Malphins, the various superpowers would no longer fear attacking the city. Not even 3 summoned mythic monsters would give the various superpowers pause. Now that Malphins was gone, the superpowers spies within the secret pavilion and Zero Wing would rush to their guilds to report the matter. It wouldn't be long before the superpowers' armies gathered around Stone Forest City, and the secret pavilion and Zero Wing hadn't acquired any more allies yet. If only 3 to 5 superpowers were targeting the city, they might be fine. The secret pavilion would have a chance of defending the city, although the battle would be a tough one. Unfortunately, more than 10 superpowers were marching toward the city, and some of them were almost as powerful as the pavilion. This was no longer a fight the secret pavilion and Zero Wing could win by themselves. Furthermore, the secret pavilion had only transferred an additional 5,000 experts to Stone Forest City within the last 2 hours. Stone Forest City was located within the Bottomless Abyss, and due to the regional dungeon's harsh environment, ordinary experts would be little more than cannon fodder in a battle here. Only stronger experts would be of any use. However, the secret pavilion had assigned these experts various locations throughout God's domain to maximize their use, and every one of them was busy with their own important tasks. Gathering these experts to one place in such a short time would be impossible. Although this was also the case for the various superpowers attacking Stone Forest City, when more than 10 superpowers banded together, their expert force would be astonishing. As Xueqi had guessed, the enemy superpowers received news of Malphins' death less than 30 seconds after the Great Demon had turned to ash. Gut. Black Flame, let's see if you can back up that arrogance now. Bright Dawn, who had resurrected in Starlink's fortress, revealed a maniacal grin when he received the news. Starlink's army had been annihilated in the initial battle for Stone Forest City. As the army's commander, escaping persecution for his failure would be quite difficult. Although Starlink wouldn't kick him out of the guild due to his individual strength, his days as a vice-guild leader were likely numbered. The fact that he'd now get to watch Zero Wing lose Stone Forest City soothed his frustrated heart. Based on the latest report, 12 superpowers were marching their armies towards Stone Forest City. The 2 strongest forces among them were the Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire. The rest were on par with Crimson Emperor. In total, the 12 superpowers had dispatched around 50,000 experts for this battle. Every one of these 50,000 players was an expert among experts. In a first-rate guild, they'd all be members of the guild's trump card legions. Furthermore, quite a few of them were refinement realm experts. Not even Starlink's forces in the ancient Undead country would stand a chance against this army, not to mention Stone Forest City. Meanwhile, the various superpowers representatives in White River City's business district were stunned when they heard of Malphins' death. What's wrong with Zero Wing? It hasn't contacted a single superpower since the Great Demon fell. Has Black Flame lost his mind? Illusory Words commented incredulously after reading the latest report. If Zero Wing had allied with another 3 or 4 superpowers, the matter would be settled. Although the guild would lose a significant portion of Stone Forest City's shares, it would still keep a cut of the city's profits. Zero Wing had already proven its strength to the various superpowers, and they wouldn't push too far in their negotiations. However, Zero Wing still refused to reach out to a single superpower, which had led to the tentative alliance between the slighted guilds. Now, Zero Wing had no hope of retaining any power within Stone Forest City. It seems Black Flame's ego has grown out of proportion after his victory over Starlink, Crimson Gate said indignantly. He shouldn't blame us for being merciless since he wants to keep the city for himself. Crimson Gate had assumed Zero Wing would rush to sign contracts with the various superpowers before losing the Great Demon Malphins. He had planned to leave the guild hanging for a while before presenting the price for Crimson Emperor's assistance. Unfortunately, His patience had been in vain. Since Zero Wing had refused to act, Crimson Emperor was left with no choice but to participate in the struggle for Stone Forest City. 12 superpowers were marching toward the city, and after including the secret pavilion, Crimson Emperor wouldn't gain a large percentage of the city's shares. Every superpower upper echelon in White River City shared Crimson Gate sentiments. They were all furious over Zero Wing's behavior, almost inclined to contact their guild's armies and order their forces to head to Stone Forest City at full speed. In contrast, when Yuan Tiexin received the report on the superpower's movements, he paled to a sickly white. Even with Zero Wing's members, there were only a little over 100,000 players in Stone Forest City. But most of Zero Wing's members present were ordinary experts and elite players. Compared to the various superpowers' joint army of 50,000 experts, the difference between the two sides' strength was massive. Yet, despite their impending doom, Xuefeng leisurely drew a magic array on the ground. He did nothing to recruit NPC soldiers or summon some of Silverwing Town's experts. Uncle Yuan, what should we do? The guild leader is mobilizing every expert he can, and has even abandoned some of the guild's operations to ensure our experts can get here as quickly as possible. However, even with those experts, I'm afraid that we're still no match for our enemy's combat power, Purple Jade said, frowning as she informed her superior of the latest report. The secret pavilion had a little over 6,000 experts in Stone Forest City thus far, which was nothing in comparison to the superpowers' joint forces. To make matters worse, the secret pavilion's forces weren't as high quality as their enemies. We have no choice but to fight, Yuan Tiexin said as he shook his head. At that moment, Xuefeng finally made the final stroke, completing his magic array. The array activated immediately, and another magic array, as large as Stone Forest City itself, appeared above the city. It glowed with a silver light, and the violent mana it contained made the experts in the city uneasy. As this array completed, pitch-black darkness, like a moonless night, swallowed the undead forest. After 5 seconds, a steadily growing spatial tear appeared above the city. After another 3 seconds, the tear transformed into a colossal black hole. The black hole swallowed all light, and no player could see anything within. However, they could feel an intense aura emerge from the phenomenon. As if time and space had frozen, every player in the city stared in shocked silence as a 100-meter, 5-story tower dropped into the city's center. What is that? How can dark energy be so dense? Yuan Tiexin was astonished, unable to tear his eyes away from the tower that now graced Stone Forest City. Even he struggled to move while under the influence of the tower's aura. He'd be lucky to exhibit 10% of his combat power. In such a state, even an ordinary expert could defeat him. Its name is the Dark Tower, Xuefeng announced with a satisfied smile. Of course, you can refer to it by its other name. The Tower of Death. Chapter 2161. Suppressing with a Snap. Xuefeng was quite excited to have successfully summoned the Dark Tower. He had only ever heard of the tower in the past. He had never actually seen or experienced one. The Dark Seed was extremely rare in God's domain, even rarer than fragmented legendary items. Hence, Xuefeng had been quite surprised when Bright Dawn had revealed the item. To summon a Dark Tower, players first needed to defeat the demon summoned with a Dark Seed. However, killing that particular demon was easier said than done. Players had often relied on NPCs to suppress and defeat these summoned demons during Xuefeng's previous life. Killing one without such help was extremely difficult. Although the NPC's participation wouldn't interfere with the Dark Tower design's drop rate, NPCs wouldn't allow the construction to exist. They'd confiscate the Dark Tower design the moment it appeared. Players wouldn't have a chance to get their hands on the item. Because of this, Xuefeng could count the number of powers that had successfully summoned a Dark Tower on one hand. Moreover, outsiders weren't allowed within a tower or city that contained a Dark Tower. Only allied or subordinate guilds would be granted entry. Xuefeng had merely been a second-rate guild's guild leader in his past. Even ordinary superpowers had been unreachable, not to mention top-ranked superpowers. They had simply lived in different worlds. Hence, Xuefeng had never expected to summon a Dark Tower now. We don't have much time left, Guild Leader Black Flame. The allied superpower's 50,000-man army will arrive in less than half an hour. Yuan Tianxin reminded the younger man when he saw Shifeng's relaxed expression. From his point of view, Shifeng didn't seem to understand the danger they were in right now. The Dark Tower might be powerful, but one or two defensive structures wouldn't be enough to stop the enemy they were about to face. They're all here? Shifeng's smile brightened at the news. In that case, let's go meet them. Meet them? Yuan Tianxin was flabbergasted. Hurriedly he asked, isn't that too dangerous? Even with Stone Forest City's support, stopping them will be difficult. If we lose our terrain advantage, we'll be fish on the chopping block. With how much they have to gain, they won't hold back. Let's see them try, Shifeng said, laughing. This, Shifeng's very existence baffled Yuan Tianxin. He couldn't tell whether the swordsman was incredibly confident or just foolish. It's fine. I don't mind going by myself, Shifeng suggested once he noticed Yuan Tianxin's hesitation. That won't do. The secret pavilion is one of Stone Forest City's shareholders. Since you're going, guild leader Black Flame, how can I just stand by and watch? Besides, if the secret pavilion makes an appearance, these superpowers might hold back out of fear, maintaining some pretense, Yuan Tianxin said, shaking his head as he prepared to risk his life alongside Shifeng. He didn't think that meeting the various superpowers was altogether a bad idea. They hadn't reached Stone Forest City just yet, so they might have an opportunity to ally with a few of these invading superpowers. However, if they waited until the armies arrived and solidified their alliance, the secret pavilion and Zero Wing would lose any hope of holding the city. Following which, Shifeng and Yuan Tianxin left Stone Forest City and made their way toward the various superpowers' armies, which had just entered the Undead Forest. Both of these individuals were well known in the virtual gaming world at this point. Even if the various superpowers members weren't familiar with Zero Wing, they had heard of Black Flame. Why are they here? By the looks of it, they've come to negotiate. You're probably right. After all, we have 50,000 top-tier experts on our side. How could a recently promoted guild city possibly stop us? The various superpowers forces were surprised to see Shifeng and Yuan Tianxin approach, discussing the matter amongst themselves. What is Black Flame trying to do? He actually wants to negotiate now? Illusory Words was astonished to see the two famous players emerge from between the trees. If they wanted to negotiate, they should have done so before the various superpowers' armies had gathered. Now that these superpowers had combined their forces, convincing any of them to switch sides would be practically impossible. After all, they now had the initiative. You actually have to ask? Crimson Gate replied with a sneer. He must have realized how terrifying this army is and realized that he isn't strong enough to stop us. He's probably here to try to recruit 3 or 4 superpowers. If he succeeds, he might be able to hold on to a fraction of Stone Forest City. Every superpower present shared the same thought. They couldn't think of any other reason that Shifeng would make such a risky move. If they killed Shifeng here, they'd deal a severe mental blow to Zero Wing as a whole. Doing so would also increase their members' morale, making it easier to capture Stone Forest City. Why are you here, Black Flame? If you're here to negotiate, I'd advise you to turn around. Of course, we'll let you leave safely if you obediently hand over Stone Forest City. Ultimately, we only want the city, not your pitiful lives. That's right. Give us Stone Forest City, and we'll let you leave with your lives. The superpowers' upper echelons mocked Shifeng and Yuan Tianxin with playful, confident attitudes. Naturally, the idea that they'd let Zero Wing's members escape if Shifeng handed the city over was nothing more than a joke. Every player in God's domain had already heard of Zero Wing's provocation. If they did not make an example of the offending guild, how could they protect their reputations? Hand over Stone Forest City? Shifeng could not help but laugh. Aren't you quite full of yourselves? Every player fell silent when they heard Shifeng's comment. Even Yuan Tianxin stared at the swordsman, dumbfounded as he felt his stress peak. They weren't here to negotiate an alliance. What was going on? He even began to wonder if Shifeng understood their current predicament. They stood before an army of 50,000 players, all of which were experts among experts. If they worked together, killing a monster-level expert would be child's play. Yuan Tianxin's scalp tingled just from being the center of these experts' attention. He didn't even dare imagine what would happen if they started a fight with these players. Illusory Words, who stood among the joint army, was just as flabbergasted. She had seen many courageous people before, but this was the first time she had encountered anyone as bold as Xueqi. He had just openly provoked 12 superpowers with a simple comment. Only death awaited him now. Is this guy stupid? Does he really believe he's invincible? He's only defeated Starlink. He better not run once the battle truly begins. As the superpower's fury grew, Xueqi snapped his fingers. In response, Stone Forest Town's Dark Tower used its dark energy to manifest a vast darkness domain that enveloped the undead forest. All players within the domain, both friend and foe, felt an immense weight drag at their bodies, losing more than half of their combat power.